Hey guys, Kinoflex here, and what you're about to watch is a compiled version of all my videos responding to the Birdman over his defenses of Ironheart that I put together after a number of you requested me to do so. And since it wasn't difficult at all for me to do, I decided to also include an additional response to him responding to Nerdrotic over Ironheart to finally put this saga to rest. By the time this video is uploaded, I should hit the 3,000 subscriber milestone, so think of this as a special thanks to all of you for the support you've shown me. And with that out of the way, let's begin. Hey guys, Kinoflex here, back with another response video. In today's video, I'm going to be responding to the Birdman, who went on a warpath against people talking negatively about Ironheart. I'm going to make multiple videos on this due to time constraints, and I'm keeping the intro brief. So let's just dive right in.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that was enough. What the fuck are we doing?
Well, it sounds like you were trying to count to 10 but got frustrated. But don't worry, not all of us are great at numbers.
A media property releases and a tornado of losers rush to release videos on it.
If we're talking about channels dedicated to reviewing shows and movies that have just come out, isn't it normal to do that since the best time to talk about new media properties is around the same time that they are released?
Hoping to grab hate clicks and grift views.
Oh, I see. The problem is that people don't like it, and their opinions don't align with yours. But I'm still a bit confused, as the central premise of your video would suggest that you yourself are looking for hate clicks from viewers who dislike the people you talk about in your video. And technically you are making what you would call grift views by having these alleged grifters be the focal point of your video. And I make my fair share of response videos to people doing something similar, so no hate there. But it does beg the question of why you think you're so different to their form of content outside of you having a more positive opinion of the media properties being discussed. Typically what happens is that a media property releases, they criticize it, and then you criticize their responses. Again, when you look at it from this context, the content you put out isn't much different from theirs besides how you feel about the media properties being discussed. You even seem to acknowledge this somewhat, but claim a non-existent moral high ground as if you aren't making money the same way they do with their content. Calling yourself an anti-grifting grifter doesn't mean you're not also a grifter.
Of course, the usual shitbirds like Heel vs. Babyface and The Critical Drinker have already uploaded their takes, and we'll get to them in a moment. But even relative unknowns are able to grow a following by posting grift content hating on black-led media properties it feels they didn't even watch or understand.
Are you really suggesting that Disney is at all black-led? Come on now, this is Black Panther levels of cope. Because just like back then, the predominantly white executives and board directors at Disney are laughing their asses off while counting your money over you even suggesting such a thing. You destroyed your entire credibility as a critic immediately here, because you revealed that your enjoyment from the show doesn't stem from the actual quality of the writing being good, but merely what it represents to you, which is pretty meaningless.
Now listen here, you uncivilized mayo monkey. If you had bothered to do even the most basic amount of research, you would realize that this show, no, this masterpiece in television writing, was born from the creative control given to the most accomplished black visionaries of our time, with the GOAT himself, Ryan Coogler, serving as executive producer. Wakanda forever! So you sit your white ass down, get the monkey shit out of your goddamn ears, and listen for once in your miserable life that Yakub blessed you with.
Oh yeah, by the way, I got a new editor. His name's the Dodo Man, and I hired him on short notice. If he bears a resemblance to another YouTuber, I swear, it's just a coincidence. And let me know what you guys think about him in the comments. But getting back to the response. First of all, I don't have to acknowledge these writers as masters of their craft purely because of the identity groups they happen to be a part of. None of them are Dwayne McDuffie. Second of all, I am not buying into the premise that the black writers hired for this had any significant creative control whatsoever. As we have continuously seen with other projects, writers, including the directors, are very limited as to what they can do with a given MCU story. The only thing they could affect would be the style of the film, but even they would have to get permission to do so from their white bosses. And we have seen this be the case numerous times with directors for MCU movies saying they only did it for the paycheck, with some of them choosing to prioritize projects they do actually have control over. The most famous example of this would be when Edgar Wright was originally supposed to direct Ant-Man, only to just end up leaving the project because what they essentially wanted him to do wasn't tell an interesting story, but to work as a babysitter to the cast and crew as they film a script he had no say in. So please spare me any accusations of people being racist because they didn't like this show.
Some, like this dog food eating scumbag, played their hand a little too early by starting the lie before the show was even released, so you know this hate campaign is entirely manufactured.
This would be true if people weren't already familiar with Ironheart, who is a very unlikable character with bad stories in the comics. She was also in Wakanda Forever, and nobody really liked her in that either. I'll also link a video explaining why that's the case. The only reason she was created was so that the writer who created her, who is white by the way, would make money through residuals off of her. And there were already 2 other characters who fit the archetype of this character with Rhodey's niece Lila Rhodes and Jensen's daughter Tony Ho, who have more to do with Tony Stark personally than Riri Williams does as a legacy character. Her backstory is that she hacked into Stark's computer to steal his armor designs, where she then stole resources from an MIT lab to build a shittier suit, because she was mad that her teacher told her that she couldn't be Tony Stark after she pestered her into saying that, since she was unhappy with being told that she could be whatever she wanted. She had no connection to the hero she's copying, didn't earn anything, and never struggles or faces consequences for her actions. Her backstory sucks, her motivations suck, and any attempts at making her a character to root for sucks. If someone is going to make an adaptation of a character or storyline I dislike when they could easily make a better story with a character and storyline I actually enjoy, I'm going to be frustrated because you have all the tools you need at your disposal, but you're simply choosing not to prioritize telling that story. Most people would prefer seeing a War Machine show, a Blade show, or a Heroes for Hire show before seeing an Ironheart show, because nobody likes this character.
I mean, this guy had less than 1,000 followers 2 days ago, and despite getting ratioed by the people watching, and by yours truly, he was still able to garner followers for hating something.
Good on him for getting that back, I guess. He's allowed to dislike what he wants to dislike. And if people share his sentiments and choose to support him through his content, I don't really see an issue.
That's what Shohei Kondo did. His channel was relatively quiet until he began shit-talking a video game that featured a black protagonist, and boom, 400,000 view video here, 300,000 view video there.
Again, I'm not really seeing the issue here. He's allowed to voice his thoughts on something and dislike it even if it happens to have a black protagonist in it. And even though I did not buy and play Assassin's Creed Shadows, I'm familiar with the controversy surrounding it and know that the problems with it don't simply amount to black people bad. It has more to do with a white academic lying and fabricating historical sources to give himself fame and recognition. Yasuke is a real person, but his real-life accomplishments that have been paraded around in fictional stories are not, which is not ideal when you make those made-up accomplishments a central part of your historical fiction game, as a certain degree of historical accuracy is required, or else it simply becomes just fiction. People who enjoy historical fiction generally do so with the understanding that they're learning something new, and having outright historical falsehoods presented as fact makes the story and overall experience worse. And I would imagine it would be incredibly offensive to people of Japanese origins like Shohei Kondo to see their history bastardized in such a way.
And that taught him to make video after video on that game, hoping to milk the situation as much as he could, resulting in 26 videos on the same topic.
Holy shit. 26 videos on the same topic? What a complete fucking psycho. I take back everything I said. Take away this man's internet access, have him muzzled, and take him to the penis explosion chamber immediately. There's no way someone can justify making that many videos on something so many times. Oh, well, will you look at that? You're just a blatant hypocrite.
Mr. Electric, send this
Gentlemen,
to the penis explosion chamber and have his penis exploded immediately!
take your loose vagina lips and keep them closed. You diarrhea squirt from an asshole. Th3Birdman puts a lot of effort into his videos. They take massive amounts of time and effort to make, with his scripts being the result of hours and even days of research.
Sure, I don't doubt that these videos are all that easy to make, but why not assume that's also the case for Shohei Kondo's videos as well? There is no fixed amount of videos you can have on a topic. You even have entire channels dedicated to talking about one specific topic. So who is to say that he isn't putting in the effort or that the amount of videos he made is unjustified? All I get from this is that he's very passionate in talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows, which isn't an issue. If another channel had a playlist of videos of them playing the game that were double the amount of videos Shohei Kondo had on his channel, should that person also be criticized? How about people who have the exact opposite opinion as Shohei Kondo on the game, where they have 26 different videos telling you what they like about the game. Would that not be okay as well? This is just a very bizarre argument on your end since you do the exact same thing.
And the crazy part is, none of these people's criticisms even make sense. I've shown countless times that simple research and fact-checking is enough to blow up their entire video. And that's what we're going to do today. Rebut a couple of these grifters lying about Ironheart simply to trick you into clicking their video. So let's start with this lunatic from Twitter.
What in the hell is this? I just got done watching the first 3 episodes for Ironheart and wow!
As has been made clear by the weak attempt at going viral for a short attention span audience, this is a low-effort TikTok that he uploaded to Twitter. As you can see, the point is to be as inflammatory as possible by being a clown for children. I mean, I can't imagine an adult audience seeing this and taking this person seriously.
I'm gonna start off with the only positive about this show, and it's the fact that Riri Williams doesn't have a nanotech suit. We're back to the good old days. But other than that, this show is crap.
This is a typical lie of those that try to shit on the MCU. They use people's vague memories of the helmets and masks in the MCU to say the entire costume is made out of nanotech, and that is obviously not true. War Machine has been using a tactile suit since the second Iron Man. His suit's last couple appearances in Endgame clearly show that not even his helmet was nanotech, so this is demonstrably a lie. Pepper's suit was shown to be tactile as well. There are less nanotechnology suits in the MCU than there are non-nanotech suits, and mainly, the criticism is centered around the helmets themselves.
Wow, you really showed him. How dare he praise an aspect of a show for having something he hasn't seen in an MCU movie or show in 6 years. You're such a goddamn hero. Nobody should be allowed to say anything positive about this show.
And I don't buy that Riri Williams is actually this smart girl. She doesn't act smart. Everything she does is dumb.
Would you like to substantiate that position? Where is the evidence that everything she does is dumb? This is how you know this person is attempting to grift. They make blanket claims without supporting them with anything, and that's because the point isn't to actually review this property seriously, but to get people who are already inclined to dislike this property to click the video. I could very easily provide evidence that Riri shows clear intelligence through her actions, such as literally creating a suit out of scraps, and it not only works, but has a functional AI that is capable of autonomous movement.
I actually agree with the guy you're bitching about. I don't buy that Riri Williams is smart either, because of the stupid decisions that she shouldn't be making throughout the show. Sure, we see her building amazing inventions that have tons of practical uses in day-to-day life, but you would think that a smart person who has created all of this stuff would patent all of it to become a billionaire who helps people all throughout the world. But instead, she chooses to join a criminal organization to steal mere thousands of dollars that she could just as easily earn on her own through legal means. Or better yet, just ask for from her royal friends in one of the most richest and advanced nations in the world. She also commits these crimes while wearing an easily identifiable suit of flying armor that everyone has seen her wearing, including her own colleagues at MIT, who know that she stole the suit from them. And we're still not done, because her first suit apparently required her to scam MIT for 4 years to be able to build it and to also make it functional while needing extremely rare and expensive components from a black arms dealer to repair. Yet somehow, she's able to build an entirely new and better suit in a few hours by only using parts from a car made in the 1970s. Now, I'm not an expert on cars, but I'm pretty sure they don't have the kind of shit you would need to make a functional Iron Man suit, especially after the show went out of its way to communicate how hard it is to obtain the materials to build one. So yeah, when you present a character and tell me that she's smart only to have her make the dumbest possible decisions available to her constantly, while also creating shit that she shouldn't in the context of the story, the illusion of her being a genius is completely broken. And any feats that are supposed to be a result of her supposed intelligence might as well be from superpowers or magic, because that's more believable than thinking this character is smart.
It would have been 10 times better if Tony Stark was in this and he was her mentor. That would have been way better than what we're getting. Her AI that she has now is nothing but a joke. That AI is just cracking jokes the whole time.
I agree that it would have been cool if the show followed the comics and had Tony Stark be the AI in her suit, but there are obvious contractual issues with this, as Robert Downey Jr. has retired from the role of Tony Stark. However, the AI that we have narratively makes sense for the story, and it seems your actual issue with this is that the AI isn't Tony, not because there's an actual issue with the character. And the reason she's more lighthearted is because the AI is literally based on her best friend. Ask yourself, if you had an AI that was based on your best friend, wouldn't they at least tell the occasional joke? This is a non-criticism. If the AI was Tony Stark, he would literally be joking all the time too, because that is how Tony was characterized.
Hey, Forrest.
We can talk, sir.
Oh, I see, so it's personal?
No, you intimidate them.
Good God, you're a woman. I don't want to see this on your MySpace page. Please, no gang signs. No, throw it up, I'm kidding.
Hey, Tony.
I'm sorry, this is the fun V. The humdrum V is back there.
I've been in captivity for 3 months. There are 2 things I want to do. I want an American cheeseburger. And the other...
That's enough. What's wrong?
Nothing, I'm just going into cardiac arrest because you
What?
yanked
I thought
out
you said this was safe.
You have a lot of nerve showing up here tonight. Can I at least get a reaction from you?
Panic. I would say panic.
He looked down the barrel of an alien invasion and called Ebony Maw Squidward. What do you even think you're saying here?
Once again, you're confused. The issue isn't necessarily characters telling jokes, it's that the jokes from the AI aren't funny. Notice how he used numerous clips of Tony telling jokes that are actually funny, while not showing any jokes from the AI. There's a reason for that.
Marvel, what are we doing?
And blatant bigotry. No actual criticism of the character, just hate for the actor. This will be a trend moving forward.
Yeah, Marvel, what are you doing? How do you go from a fat supervillain to a drag queen? How do you go from 2 supervillains called the Blood Brothers to the Blood Siblings, with neither one being a man? How do you go from a character called Clown to a normal woman? What exactly was a person doing your casting smoking? Also, calling someone bigoted for not liking drag queens is such a massive reach. They're a form of entertainment, and not everyone is entertained by them. I myself don't enjoy watching drag shows because I'm not the target demographic, since I'm not gay. Do you even like watching drag shows, Birdbrain? Because I never see you talk about them on your channel.
Checkmate, colonizer. You expose yourself as a complete fraud. Nobody can call themselves straight until they get their back blown out at a sleepover. Go get educated, you simpleton.
But besides the actor being miscast, I don't really care about the character of Slug in the show, as they just remind me of Job from Banshee. But again, people are allowed to have preferences.
And I see now why they decided to release 3 episodes this week and 3 episodes next week, because nobody wants to sit week to week and wait for this.
I mean, I agree, but for an entirely different reason. I don't want to wait week to week for any goddamn show, and I am honestly sick of this practice. But this idea that Marvel released this show in the manner that it did because they thought people wouldn't like the show is a common thread amongst grifters. It is also false. Once again, dipshit grifters act as if the SAG-AFTRA strikes didn't majorly affect the industry. The show's producer clearly states that the strikes affected their release schedule and that they didn't want their content competing with each other. This tracks, as Marvel will have released 3 films this year, and they were spaced out enough to allow each one to have its theatrical run and digital release before the next film released. If this 6-episode show did a week-to-week release, with June 24th being its first day, its 6th episode would have come out days after Fantastic Four's release, something I'm sure Disney wanted to avoid. This is why they released Daredevil's first 2 episodes in March, so its release schedule wouldn't interfere with the upcoming Thunderbolts film in May. But I guess they did that because they weren't confident in that show too, right?
I mean, yeah, what the other guy said still applies. The executives at Marvel Studios weren't confident in how well these shows would perform if they were released in the traditional weekly format because of a lack of viewer interest from the get-go. You're acting as though it would be a given that people would actively avoid an MCU show once an MCU movie releases, which only proves his point further. People aren't going to complain over having more to watch if what's available is good. If they actually believed that people would remain interested in watching it, then they still would have released it as it was intended even if a film is coming out, because the quality of the show should speak for itself. But in this case, it doesn't. Marvel fatigue is not a real thing. There's simply a bad writing fatigue.
The actress that's playing Ironheart, she's just not good, and she is unbelievable. And the fact that Ironheart actually killed a man at the end of this episode, Iron Man, Tony Stark, wouldn't approve of that.
First of all, she didn't kill the guy. He was trying to kill her and she just left him to die. If you want to call leaving your would-be killer to suffocate killing him, I would suggest you're stretching the meaning of those words.
You okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get you out of here.
Okay, I'll get you out of here.
She's still actively choosing to leave a man to die, so I don't know what your point is here.
But this idea that Tony fucking Stark wouldn't approve of killing a guy is hilarious. Literally in his first movie, he killed these guys. And these guys. I guess the missile he shot in this tank just tickled those people. But what's even funnier is in Tony's last appearance in the MCU, he quite literally killed Thanos and his entire army with a snap of his fingers. I know they're both intelligent and billionaires, but Tony Stark is not Bruce Wayne. Iron Man kills. Hell, all of the big three kill. So even if he didn't approve of Ironheart's actions, he would be the wrong guy to deliver that message. Kinda like you.
How stupid do you have to be to lie so blatantly like this? You can clearly see that the context of these scenes are completely different, where Tony and the other members of the Big Three are saving civilians from active terrorists and alien threats, while Riri is just leaving a guy who is no longer a threat to die as he screams for help. She's in her suit, so she's completely safe and can easily move him so he can be arrested. The writers could have just killed this guy off by having him do something stupid out of malice on his own. But instead we just have Riri be incredibly sadistic by allowing him to die instead of saving him, which is not something you want to see from a superhero that isn't an anti-hero. And the show tries to justify this by saying she's worried about what would happen to her family if the guy survived, when in the very next episode she allows them to be put into danger by refusing to contact Wakanda for help for no reason. Keep in mind this guy edited this, so he knows the proper context for all these scenes. So he should know that none of the situations he provided are comparable at all. But his brain is so fried that he actually thinks that nobody would notice. Something I noticed from people like Birdman and other people in his sphere is that they tend to have a very strong dislike towards black reviewers who don't just mindlessly shower something with praises if it features someone who looks like them in a lead role, because they understand that writing quality matters more than representation. And that pisses Birdbrain off because he can't just basically call them racist like he does other reviewers. But you can absolutely tell that he wants to call them a certain word constantly throughout his videos, but can't because he's too much of a coward.
And newsflash, black people kinda like hip-hop. Well, real black people and not the trash pandas that you know.
This ungrateful ass nappy-head Negro still breathing and don't have sense enough to stay off my grass.
And if it sounds like I'm being uncharitable towards this guy, keep in mind that he literally brings up race being the reason why people dislike the show in under a minute for his video with no evidence to support that accusation whatsoever.
Alright, everyone's second favorite tap dancer has a take on the Ironheart show, so let's take a listen.
There must be a bot farm that monitors my videos. And I've noticed this for a while. It usually happens as one of two things. What'll happen is I'll do a review of something, I'll do a reaction, and then all of a sudden I'll see everybody saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. It's usually one of two reasons. What I suspect is that there are bot farms out there to push specific agendas, TV shows, movies, whatever have you. So the companies, they pay these bot farms to say, hey, it's great, make sure you check it out. Or sometimes there is something going on online, social media. Either somebody got something going on Twitter and all their followers are coming to parrot exactly what they said, or someone said something in a video and it's the same thing, they're coming to parrot. One of the two things happened yesterday. After I did my reaction, I kept getting, hey, it wasn't that bad. I just watched it. Hey, I just watched the first 3 episodes. It wasn't that bad. Hey, it wasn't that bad. Riri's actually pretty incredible. Hey, it wasn't that bad. I'm like, they're all saying it wasn't that bad.
As per usual with grifters, they take the conspiratorial option instead of accepting that people just like the show. He thinks bot farms are descending upon his particular video to push a narrative, which of course begs the question, why hasn't this happened a long time ago and to more people? It's like, if they could do this, why only now and just to you?
The issue Tyrone is describing isn't simply people praising the show. It's multiple comments saying the exact same thing without elaborating. And bots are absolutely prevalent on YouTube, and people have raised awareness of this issue for years. It's an issue that even small channels like my own have. And while I don't have evidence to support that the bots are from Disney themselves, it's not hard to believe that bots would go into comment sections for the purpose of engagement farming by making provocative comments to get people to interact with them.
Another question Mr. Potato Head doesn't have an answer for is why don't he and other grifters call out review bombs for these properties, especially before they've even released? I mean, if the people saying they liked the show are bots, surely those that are saying they don't like a show they haven't even seen are bots too. No?
So this is something that I've given some thought to, but have you guys honestly considered the possibility that Disney themselves are faking these negative reviews by paying a third party to spam these review aggregate sites? Because it doesn't matter if the reviews are positive or negative, as they would still be boosting their own product's attention and incentivizes whatever group the film is representing to go see it, all the while dismissing any bad reviews as illegitimate, which gives sites like Rotten Tomatoes an excuse to delete them en masse. And it's not like this is an unsolvable problem, because if you want people to stop reviewing things that aren't even out yet on these sites, then all the sites need to do is simply not allow people to post reviews until what they want to review actually releases. If a single unfunny comedian like Amy Schumer can pressure Netflix into changing their entire rating system because so many people were calling her unfunny, then why can't a multi-billion-dollar company like Disney pressure shitty sites like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb into doing what they want? It's a simple solution, and it's worth asking why Disney themselves aren't pushing for that solution, which is what causes me to assume that they are allowing this to happen because they benefit from having themselves framed as victims of bigotry when they're not. It might sound hard to believe, but it's far more believable that companies are paying people to do this than fans of obscure e-celebrities wasting their time doing it for free with no personal benefit whatsoever. Regardless, review bombing has just become a pointless conversation to have because people just use it as an excuse to not address the elephant in the room of a show, movie, or game being dead on arrival. The exact same excuses were being used for The Acolyte, where we were told to ignore our lying eyes with bad reviews because none of them were real, and that there actually was a huge demand for the show that people weren't seeing because of those dastardly review bombs. Only that wasn't true at all because it ended up just getting cancelled after a single season because nobody was watching it.
Back to being an ignorant Neanderthal, I see. You had to be a real piece of shit to not acknowledge that racers are going to these review sites and practically hanging MCU properties from trees with their coordinated hate campaigns. Do you know how many people die because of these review bombs? Do your damn research, Mayo Monkey.
Another thing that's weird about the review bombing narrative is that this isn't reflected through any other MCU projects released this year. If review bombing is such a big problem for the MCU, why did we not hear about it until Ironheart released? Can you even tell me how you can differentiate artificial hate from genuine hate? What amount of reviews from universally hated movies like Joker 2 is from bots? And does that amount of bots even matter in the context of general audiences disliking it? How exactly can we tell if the public dislikes something if we can't look at the overwhelming number of reviews and come to the obvious conclusion?
Like these. You know, literally word-for-word reviews that were posted before the show's actual release. I wonder why this conehead doesn't have anything to say about actual astroturfing.
So 2 copy-paste reviews invalidates everyone else who disliked the show who didn't leave copy-paste reviews. Got it. You also just baselessly accused Tyrone of supporting astroturfing when he is literally calling out astroturfing in the clip you're responding to. I'm not even going to get into the lack of interest on your end and cracking down on fake reviews that give positive scores to the show, because you made it clear that's not a priority for you.
Every woke box check is in this first episode that I can think of. Everything that you can think of that is woke garbage injected into television shows, movies, comic books, video games is in this first episode that I can think of.
Everything, including the actual definition of woke. I'll never understand how a black man, a person from the actual community that word comes from, can misuse it the way white conservatives do.
You're doing a great job of establishing yourself as a senile old man who's painfully out of touch. Tyrone is not using the word incorrectly since he's clearly using it in a disapproving context, which Merriam-Webster defines as politically liberal or progressive, especially in a way that is considered unreasonable or extreme. It's also accepted as a term to use against people who are inauthentic in their beliefs and aren't actually accomplishing anything. I know you're purposely being a disingenuous idiot, but when people use that term in the context you use it in, they are always people who have no understanding of current day social issues or how the world works.
Remember that the Earth's resources are limited.
You do not need to have a big family, because all the world's people are your brothers and sisters.
The power is yours.
So they get the term thrown back at them in a mocking way to highlight that fact. It's about failing to be socially conscious, not successfully being socially conscious. Whether or not that is the case is up for debate, but that is what people mean when they use the term negatively. In Ironheart's case, the show tries to be socially conscious but fails by justifying its main character committing crimes instead of being a superhero. If you seriously think that you are allowed to commit crimes because of your personal circumstances, then that's a sign that you belong in prison.
Aha! You're just another anti-woke grifter trying to put us all in the concentration camps. Show me your skin color. I bet you're a Mexican Nazi.
I don't even like using that term, which is why you won't typically find me using it in my videos, as I'll just call something stupid or tone deaf instead, because I'm not simply trying to make videos for conservatives. I also want to make content for liberals, or really anyone who wants to watch and hear what I have to say. But when you mischaracterize someone in such an obvious and dumb way, I'm not going to let it slide.
I mean, I kinda can.
What did I tell all of you at the start of the video? How can he possibly be an Uncle Tom for not liking Marvel slop? This guy is so insecure over people not sharing his worldview. He's so delusional that he actually thinks he's not repeating talking points that came from white progressives. That's how embarrassing he is. Apparently, this needs to be told to Birdbrain since he wasn't brought up correctly, but being black is simply a skin color, not a personality trait or some membership to an elite club you can kick someone out of.
Being black isn't what I'm trying to be, it's what I am. I'm running the same race and jumping the same hurdles you are, so why are you tripping me up? You said we need to stick together, but you don't even know what that means. If you ask me, you're the real sellout.
Check your privilege, Bail Monkey. You are in no position to lecture Daddy Birdman as a black man with your skin looking like expired milk.
Oh, I'm not judging him as a black guy. I'm judging him as a pathetic race baiter, which has no race requirement. Instead of providing any actual arguments, he simply attacks a person's identity that will appeal to people whose politics align with his. In other words, exactly what he accuses other people of doing. It's lazy, it's not clever, and it's a waste of everyone's time.
So, as a black person, what irritates me the most is the overused stereotypes of us.
I agree. Like how we get blamed for the majority of crime when that's not even remotely true according to actual FBI data, so they then have to specify violent crime. And when that's also shown to not be true, they have to use per capita. But when exonerations show that also to not be true, they then move on to other stereotypes. Like, oh, that's not what you're talking about, is it?
Okay, wow. There's a lot to break down here because this is all just complete nonsense. To start off, why are you acting as though Tyrone Magnus isn't referring to violent criminals as an unfair stereotype for black people? You can acknowledge that black crime is an issue in the United States because that's a fact, and also acknowledge that stereotyping any random black person you see as a criminal without even doing anything is prejudiced. Then you try to debunk the widely accepted 1350 statistic by misrepresenting an article breaking down the National Registry of Exonerations 2023 annual report by presenting it as though the majority of violent black criminals in general are wrongfully convicted. When if you actually read the article, they specify that they're only talking about 153 recorded cases in the year 2023, where 93 of the exonerees were black, which barely covers the overall amount of murders committed by black Americans in that year, which is estimated to be around 6,405. So the amount of exonerations from the annual report is a nothing burger if you're trying to use it to deny the reality of violent crime rates from the black community. But on top of the exoneration numbers not representing a significant portion of those arrested and convicted who are black, these exonerations still don't necessarily disprove the actual perpetrators of being black themselves, because statistically, people are more likely to be murdered by the same race. Also, he pretends to know what per capita means, but he doesn't. Because the point people make regarding the 1350 statistic isn't that white people don't commit any violent crimes or that black people commit all violent crimes. It's that despite being 13% of the population, members of the black community will commit around 46 to 62% of the homicides in America, as it varies per year, which highlights a significant problem in the black community that urgently needs to be fixed because murder is bad. And since I know Birdbrain and his fans are going to respond to this out of context and in bad faith since I'm responding to easily refutable points he himself brought up unprompted, I would just like to clarify again that there's a distinction to be made between looking at conclusive data on a sensitive topic and understanding the facts, and making wild and irrational conclusions from looking at the conclusive data. Being black does not mean you are naturally going to be a violent criminal, and anyone who says that is just wrong. And I would say understanding this distinction is highly important in painting an accurate picture of problems faced in the black community, especially through media. This is why I find it hilarious that Birdbrain claims to be against the stereotype of black people being portrayed as criminals, and shows this by defending a show that justifies its black protagonist committing crimes she doesn't have to commit in the first place. This guy is a complete joke.
And so, of course, she's from the hood.
But that's not a stereotype. That's an actual statistical reality due to a variety of systemic issues going all the way back to slavery. Redlining, loan denial, housing segregation, and racial discrimination all played major roles in forcing black Americans into under-resourced, marginalized communities. In fact, HOAs were originally conceived in part as tools to enforce racial exclusivity, explicitly barring black and other minority families from certain neighborhoods through restrictive covenants and zoning practices. This was shown in the 1948 Supreme Court case, Shelley versus Kramer, where the Supreme Court barred these housing covenants from being legally enforced. But it wouldn't be until the 60s that the Equal Opportunity in Housing Executive Order would be passed that racial discrimination in housing would cease to be federally funded. That's the 60s, Tyrone, only a couple years before you were born, meaning your own parents were dealing with racial inequities regarding housing. It was only a single generation prior to your own birth that these practices were made illegal, which means black people were already relegated to the worst neighborhoods with no way of getting out. Do you think they were magically able to get out of the hood after centuries of not being able to own valuable property and thus build wealth the manner in which white Americans were able to? Are you stupid?
How do you hear Tyrone's benign point and go into this delusional rant where you're not even responding to anything he's actually said? This is why I have to dedicate separate videos for this guy when responding to him, because he goes all over the place for no reason. Let's look at what Tyrone actually said, which Birdbrain deceptively edited.
As a black person, what irritates me the most is the overused stereotypes of us. And so, of course, she's from the hood. And of course, she's doing things that she shouldn't be doing to make money, or illegal things to make money.
Well, what do you know? He's criticizing the exact stereotype that Birdbrain accused him of downplaying and not caring about. What a complete scumbag. And on the topic of discrimination in housing, I'm going to just address it very briefly because as I just showed you, it has nothing to do with anything Tyrone said here. But because Birdbrain gets everything wrong in his video, what I'm going to do is offer a different perspective in the form of American economist Thomas Sowell, who has addressed all of the claims and arguments that were brought up in several of his books, most notably The Vision of the Anointed and Economic Facts and Fallacies. For things like redlining, every single race living in the high-risk designated areas were redlined. It wasn't just black people, as it discriminated against everyone who was poor. But the other races who were affected by redlining are nonetheless much better off than their black counterparts today. So why is that? Well, the short answer is that the high crime rates in these communities are keeping them poor.
Mr. Brown, what exactly are you saying?
I'm saying that I, Cleveland Brown, a black man, shot Cleveland Brown Jr., another black man.
Wait, where did everybody go?
You want to make the media go away? Just mention black-on-black crime.
The real reason Sowell provides for the disparities in living standards for poor black Americans today has more to do with a combination of government intervention in the financial markets trying and failing to address discrimination, bad personal choices being made, and crime rates lowering the value of low-income black neighborhoods because businesses aren't willing to invest in areas that are more expensive to sustain and won't even be profitable, which is how you get food deserts. Which once again makes Birdbrain look like a complete idiot for thinking that ignoring or justifying crime will somehow improve the living standards of low-income black communities when it just perpetuates the problem. If you're interested in this topic but don't want to pick up a book, the YouTuber Actual Justice Warrior made a great video a few years back highlighting the various issues with these arguments.
What irks me, though, is that when media properties do show black people prospering, these people still hate it. Look at the hate Wakanda gets, simply because it's a black nation that isn't poor.
So I guess we're just responding to the critical drinker now. Nowhere in that tweet is that sentiment communicated. The reason Wakanda in the MCU gets hate is because it's framed as the ideal human society we should aspire to replicate when it's filled with literal mud huts, outdated weaponry, self-mutilation practices, and a nonsensical system for their politics where leaders are elected through trial by combat. To give you guys a more detailed point, let's briefly examine some of the architecture of Wakanda to see how lazily made this utopia is. Specifically, this shitty building. Do you notice the sticks coming out of it? You tend to see them in ancient North African buildings and ruins, but they weren't built that way because the people of those cultures simply like the aesthetic. It's actually a smart method they use to address a design flaw in the buildings that's a consequence of working with crappy materials like clay and mud. They would use the sticks to climb up the building to make repairs with the surrounding clay and mud because the materials were constantly falling apart because of the environment. But what's worth taking note of is that once they received better materials other than clay or mud to make buildings out of, they didn't keep the sticks since they became unnecessary. In other words, the people of ancient Africa didn't view them as something deeply tied to their culture, but simply a means to an end that they would get rid of in a heartbeat to have something better. So when you look at something like Black Panther that frames itself both as some celebration of African culture and an example of what humanity should strive for, small details like this expose it as a complete failure in both regards with how lazily made it is. Because not even people native to Africa envision their society looking like this. Wakanda in the comics definitely doesn't portray itself like it does in the MCU. Ryan Coogler and other idiots at Disney probably just spent a few nights at expensive resorts in Africa without doing any actual historical research and just threw random shit they saw into the movie to virtue signal about the Afrofuturism aesthetic without any care of how stupid and unbelievable the utopia they made is. That's why in a few decades I think Black Panther is going to have the same reputation as films like Song of the South, with disclaimers apologizing for its presentation of African culture being outdated and insensitive. But I'm sure Birdbrain is just going to ignore all of this and come to my house dressed up in his favorite Black Panther costume that was made in China to beat me to death for daring to criticize his sacred cow.
And it would be entirely deserved, you filthy colonizer. Wakanda forever.
You bitches hate either way, so let's drop the act. This shit is tiring and nobody believes you.
Why are you at all pretending that anyone enjoyed Brave New World? That movie was so trash that not even the critics who get their dicks and clits sucked by Disney bother defending it.
I didn't like the Riri character in Black Panther 2.
Thanks for admitting you held a previous bias against the character that you are now bringing to a show starring that character. Makes my job showing that you're not being honest a whole lot easier.
You do realize that everyone who saw Riri in Black Panther 2 is going to be biased in one way or another, right? Would the opinions of people who enjoyed her in Black Panther 2 also be considered invalid since they are also biased? They wouldn't? Okay, then this criticism amounts to nothing, you utter buffoon.
You know, black people notice this. Is we know if you're authentically hood and if you're not.
Oh, we know. We know.
Going after people's appearances for not looking manly doesn't work when you look like this.
I like the actress's real voice and personality. I've seen her in interviews. I like that. I wish they had brought that forward rather than trying to make her hood.
Are you aware that this is an actress, Tyrone? And that acting entails that you play a character that may or may not be like you? What even is this criticism? I mean, she originally auditioned for Shuri, an African princess. That would have been completely different than who she was, and it was different than who ultimately got the role. If your criticism is that a woman who grew up in New York isn't hood enough to play a genius character from Chicago, then you might just be an idiot.
Once again, you completely fail at addressing a point. He is saying that the character sucks and doesn't utilize the natural charisma of the actress and should be written in a way to highlight those strengths.
And for the record, nothing about this show suggests that Riri is living in or from the hood. She lives in a suburb of Chicago. This is what her neighborhood looks like. As a person actually from the hood, no, this is not what the hood looks like, my dude. You are telling on yourself.
All the more reason for why the show shouldn't have gone in the direction of making her act as though she's from the hood with little options at her disposal. The show constantly tries to present Riri as being several character archetypes at once to appeal to everyone even if they contradict each other. On the one hand, she's recognized for her intelligence and accomplishments, which gets her into one of the most prestigious schools in the world, where she makes various technological advancements that can improve everyday life. Yet at the same time, she's extremely bitter over her accomplishments somehow not getting recognized despite the fact that they were, considering she was accepted into MIT, and decides to join a gang instead of actually helping people with her inventions. She also complains that her predecessor Tony Stark was able to be successful simply because of his circumstances, despite her own circumstances being just as, if not much better than his. As she can bring her ideas to any company she wants or Wakanda to get whatever resources and funding requirements she needs. And oh yeah, it completely ignores how Tony built his first suit.
He
contributed immensely to the field, so I won't roast Tony Stark off rip. But I don't have $1 billion.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
Riri doesn't work as an aspirational figure to people whose talents and potential go unrecognized because she squanders the opportunities offered to her. The people she's supposed to be representing aren't given opportunities at all and are willing to put their egos aside to get them. Riri Williams isn't the victim of a society unwilling to give her a chance, she's a victim of herself getting in her own way.
Of course, she meets a ragtag group of misfits. And what are they all? They're all minorities and they're all stealing. This is so great, just so brave and stunning, and it just makes me feel seen as a black person.
You grifters can't get your arguments in alignment at all. If the group was mostly white people stealing, you would complain that the show is showing white people in a negative light.
This was taken during the Rodney King riots. What do you think these people are doing, looting or surviving?
Well, they're looting.
Of course. Well, it's the media, see? When it's white people, it's survival, and when it's black people, it's looting.
No, Frank, it's because the white people are stealing bread, and the black people are stealing speakers. If the white people were stealing stereo equipment, I would say they were looting too.
How do you know the blacks don't have bread and no speakers?
What are you talking about?
No, okay,
what are we talking about right now? There are big
listen.
things.
No, it has to do with double standards because if they were white, they wouldn't be framed in a sympathetic light and given entire character arcs trying to pass them off as freedom fighters or Robin Hood knockoffs who aren't really the bad guys in the wider context of the story.
That's right, you cousin fucking cracker. Killmonger wanting to kill babies is fine because he's only going after the white ones. Get educated, you fucking fuck.
Which is exactly what the critical drinker complains about in nearly every single video, which we'll see later in this video.
Was there even a reason for you to respond to Tyrone if all you were going to do is obsess over critical drinker like an angry ex-girlfriend?
It really did something for me, right here.
All right, let's move on from this human pile of dirty clothes. This shit is embarrassing.
Hi everyone, it's Az here from Heel vs. Babyface.
Oh, good. It's another human pile of dirty clothes.
So it starts off with a soliloquy from Riri, which in my world means something I think completely different to what they think it means. And she talks about how she believes she can be the greatest inventor of her generation. Probably not that difficult, let's be honest. But something's holding her back. She's had all the help from Wakanda. She's had the Stark internship or whatever, but she doesn't have the cash dollar money because the only reason that Tony Stark got to where he was because he was a billionaire. Yeah, I don't think the person that made this watched Iron Man.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
I don't think you did either, because those scraps that Tony used to build his suit and arc reactor were given to him by the 10 rings to build a missile, you fucking idiot. Riri doesn't have someone giving her those materials. Not only that, the arc reactor was based on an idea by Yinsen and the arc reactor they already had at Stark Industries.
Why am I not surprised that you were defending one of the dumbest parts of the show? No, Yinsen alone did not make the miniature arc reactor. He worked together with Tony to make it by saving his life and putting an electromagnet powered by a car battery into his chest to save his life. But Tony was the one who ultimately transformed it into a miniature arc reactor. Tony was able to build something insane with limited resources and with the odds stacked against him. Riri theoretically should be able to build her own version of an arc reactor or some kind of alternative given where she is with better resources at her disposal and how smart she's portrayed to be, yet can't for bullshit reasons.
You're literally playing the scene that shows this.
So the technology actually doesn't exist. So it's
Wait, the technology. Here is the technology. I've asked you to simply make it smaller.
Bird brain, your stupidity is showing again. This scene doesn't support your argument. It refutes it as it communicates that being wealthy is not enough. You need to be highly competent and intelligent like Tony Stark, who did not reveal how he built the miniature arc reactor to everyone else in the movie. The scientist Stain yells at literally tells him that he's not as skilled as Tony Stark despite all the money and resources at his disposal.
Okay, sir, that's what we're trying to do, but honestly, it's impossible.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm not Tony Stark.
I need cash. Money. Do you think Tony Stark would be Tony Stark if he wasn't a billionaire?
Yes.
Well, then you are wrong, sir. Tony was sought after because of his weapons, something that literally wouldn't have existed if his family were of a lower socioeconomic class. No company means no weapons. No weapons means the 10 rings don't abduct Tony and he never becomes Iron Man. This is what she's saying, that his genius coupled with his money allowed him to become who he was. She has the genius, but she doesn't have the money. I can't believe you people have become names in this space. A monkey could do your job.
Well, unfortunately, you're not a monkey, since you're definitely not giving him a run for his money with your bad arguments. Again, wealth is neither a barrier for Riri or the primary contributor for why the miniature arc reactor was built. Characters like Whiplash create a miniature arc reactor in far more shittier environments. The biggest hurdle has always been knowing how to build one, not how expensive it costs to make. In Riri's case, she has no excuse because she can buy materials Stark used, such as palladium, which costs about $1,200 per ounce right now. She could also extract it from scraps like Tony did by requesting them from her university, or ask her friends in Wakanda to help her. She's a shortcut-taking asshole who becomes a criminal the moment she's met with a challenge. And you, along with the writers for this, are delusional for thinking that Tony is privileged to have been kidnapped by terrorists and thrown into a dirty dungeon because he was able to create something using his own intelligence while his life was being threatened the whole time.
So what does Riri Williams do in an attempt to procure this cash? Does she go and meet her buddies in Wakanda and say, hey, you know that I helped save the world? Can you advance us some coins so I can work on this iron suit? Or give me the vibranium or whatever it is that she needs tech-wise? No, she does what all good heroes do. Immediately turns to crime.
Even if this oversimplification were true, that would be kind of normal for the heroes in the MCU. Scott Lang has been to prison more times than the real Robert Downey Jr. Steve Rogers resisted the Sokovia Accords and became a fugitive along with his 2 friends, Sam Wilson and James Barnes. Black Widow is a literal assassin. The Scarlet Witch turned an entire town into a television show. Doing the wrong thing for the right reasons is most of the MCU's cast.
And once again, we get more disingenuous examples that aren't comparable, considering Captain America and Black Widow were forced into making those decisions. Wanda's enslavement of a whole town was a result of a mental breakdown and wasn't justified considering she becomes a villain afterwards. And the whole point of Ant-Man's movies is that he wasn't justified for being a criminal in the past, and is redeeming himself by being a hero. Riri, though, has no valid justification in her story to turn to crime.
This is an incredibly weak talking point because heroes usually break the law in some capacity while on their hero's journey. Almost no one starts out on the right side of the law. Hell, vigilantism is a crime, so Spider-Man isn't even safe.
Except we aren't talking about vigilantism. We're talking about her stealing money and leaving people to die. If Spider-Man saw Riri committing crimes, he would arrest her himself and say that she's a disgrace for not using her power responsibly. Also, I like how you call his point weak despite not directly engaging with his criticism of Riri not going to Wakanda to help. You dumb window licker.
I'm kind of confused because if we're the people that always get called racist, etc., why do all the black writers and showrunners immediately turn their black characters into thieves?
1, yes, you are a racist. I mean, you literally can't have a single discussion without saying something racist about black people.
My stepdad.
Black girl
used to say
magic.
the best way to know a thing.
My stepdad because my real dad left me. My stepdad because my real dad left me.
Do you see how you, without prompting, randomly stereotyped a black person as having an absentee father there, you human tub of Elmer's glue? This is you reacting to a trailer, meaning you don't know that her biological father actually died. So you randomly went into a racist tirade completely unprompted, and you're on a panel with a who's who of racist motherfuckers. And you somehow stood out. Oh, but it doesn't stop there, ass.
What would her Jarvis be called?
Jamiqua?
Charvisqua. I already said Charvisqua.
Jaquisha. I think Jamichael works good.
I'm going with Shanae.
I'm gonna go with shit.
Oh, look at that. You and your boyfriends are being very not racist.
I'm going to be completely honest. The only thing these guys did wrong in the clips you showed was being unfunny. Other than that, they're just telling jokes.
Goofy ass white boy. Are you seriously using the dark humor defense? When is your vanilla ice cream looking ass finally going to melt?
Yes, this is dark humor because poking fun at taboo and uncomfortable subjects for an audience is literally what dark humor is. Them saying this outlandish shit is supposed to be the joke.
Category is people who annoy you. Audience, keep quiet, please. 10 seconds, Mr. Marsh.
I know it, but I don't think I should say it.
5 seconds, Mr. Marsh.
All right, I'd like to solve the puzzle. Niggers! Huh? Oh.
They're about as racist as Birdbrain is homophobic for implying they're gay as an insult on a panel where some of them are in fact gay. You can find what they said unfunny. I don't find it funny. But you are allowed to make attempts at being funny even if the joke doesn't land. Professional comedians who have joked about much worse have said the exact same thing I am saying.
This is just what she has to say. We are outraged and fired and fired and fired. Name calling. I'm outraged. I am outraged.
You should be outraged.
I am a fool. Now, if I called you a fool,
you know what? People are feeling a new sense of entitlement.
Who are these
to
people
decency in this country?
Who are the people?
A new
How can
sense
you,
of entitlement
Patricia? Here's my question. How can you justify a bad joke, a joke that isn't funny? Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead. An attempt that isn't funny, doesn't get any laughs, and is about raping the first black woman to ever become the Secretary of State of the United States.
Don't throw that at me.
Well, why not?
The attempt is what I'm trying to fight for. The joke funny jokes and unfunny jokes are come out of the same birth. That you don't know if anything is going to be funny. You should attempt to be able to make anything funny.
And 2, since when is black writers writing their main characters as a thief a normal thing? Forgive me for assuming here, but someone that looks, talks, and acts like you very likely does not watch a lot of black films, so you'll excuse me if I just disregard this silly talking point. I mean, unless you're trying to tell me that you've seen Higher Learning, Poetic Justice, Boomerang, or Coming to America. Yeah, I'm not gonna hold my breath on that one.
Once again, you don't understand the point being communicated. He is asking why the black writers and showrunners for Ironheart can get a pass writing dumb and tone-deaf black characters and storylines for their shows. And why are you acting as though these movies are sacred texts that can only be accessed with a certain amount of melanin in your skin? For someone who carelessly throws around racism accusations, you sure don't seem to have a problem making racist assumptions about people based purely on how they look.
We've seen it so many times in shows now. It's like they're perpetuating their own stereotype. Just you wait till you get onto the part where she starts killing people.
As a person that has watched all 3 episodes, I'm still waiting for her to start killing people. Maybe you watched the porn parody that Nerdrotic mentioned in his video, because Riri doesn't actually kill anyone in this show so far. Don't know why you would just make that up, but hey, that's why you're you.
That's right. Were you chuds too busy licking your toilet seats clean to pay attention to the show? She didn't kill someone. She just left them to die, you dum-dums. That's right.
Legally speaking, sure, that's the case, but morally, it's just as bad as outright killing the guy, which is why people, including myself, have such a big problem with it considering how absolutely unnecessary it was for her to do that. And it's very weird to see you continuously try and downplay this even though you know it's indefensible.
Yeah, my means of fundraising have been a little experimental, says the person that's just come straight out of Wakanda.
You bring this up as if you didn't actually watch Wakanda Forever, because at the end of that movie, Shuri, you know, the monarch of that country, specifically told her that she couldn't have any of the tech they worked on while she was there. The implication was that her job was done and that all Wakandan resources would remain in Wakanda, not to be used outside of the country.
Your suit, it's a great design, but can't let you leave with it.
It's all good.
Shuri didn't let Riri keep her suit because it's made out of vibranium, which doesn't translate into her being unwilling to help her out in other ways by giving her money or materials that aren't vibranium. The ending of Black Panther literally shows the Wakandans going into inner cities to build outreach centers to provide the kind of resources Riri is asking for, which she never seeks out. For someone who likes to eat out this movie's ass by calling it the most important film for black people ever made, you sure seem to not remember anything that happened in it.
She then blows up the lab in MIT, breaking this poor guy's arm, but it's okay, because he's white.
This is what these morons do. Randomly say things happen to white people in these media properties because they're white. Remember when I said that these grifters can't get their arguments together? This piglin would have exactly the opposite issue of Tyrone had the criminals been made white. Anyway, what actually happened here is Williams caused an accident in a lab. You know, the place where accidents are not exactly a rare occurrence. This guy got himself hurt by panicking and running away, and this very event is what got Riri expelled. How on earth did this potato that fell on the ground spin this as being okay? He's just making shit up.
Not being able to recognize basic hyperbole is not a good look, Birdbrain, especially when your defense just amounts to blaming the victim of an accident that Riri herself caused. But something that you and Haz are both overlooking is the fact that Riri wasn't simply expelled for that specific accident, but continued accidents caused by her selling her own inventions to students. Admittedly, this is one of the few moments where the show actually calls Riri out on her bullshit, where the dean tells her that she isn't a victim and is actually incredibly coddled to the degree that she has her own specialized classes made to accommodate her. You would think that this would be a learning moment for Riri where she realizes that she's not an underdog and just a bitch, but instead she doubles down by stealing her armor from MIT and going on to commit more crimes, showing that she didn't learn a damn thing. And that scene of the dean calling her out is completely undermined by the fact that MIT still continues to coddle her by not pressing criminal charges against her. The show just allows her to get away with bullshit and expects us to clap like seals.
But then we discover through all this bitching that she actually has a grant for all of this. So why does she need extra money if she has a grant that is paying for this? The AI's been done. The suit's been... I'm sort of confused as to what her actual problem is, other than being a greedy cow.
Hey, ass. You might want to slow down on calling folks cows. Just a bit of advice there, Slick. In any case, this argument doesn't make any sense, because the grant was paying for MIT's tuition, not solely the suit, you moron. In what universe do you think an Iron Man-level suit can be paid for just with a school grant? Your head is large, but there doesn't seem to be anything in there.
This was built with a box of scraps in a cave. This has been told to you so many times at this point, but like your hero Riri, you just ignore the obvious because you're under the delusion that if you play dumb, you can just somehow get away with it.
The rest of this video is more of the same, so let's move on to King Grifter himself.
Well, I told you so's don't get much bigger than this. Ironheart has finally been inflicted on the world after gathering dust in the Marvel vault for the better part of 3 years, and by golly, I can see why they tried so hard to bury this thing.
So, Will is once again spreading the lie that Marvel was purposefully withholding this series when we all know the show couldn't release due to those strikes. Imagine that. The critical drinker doesn't know what he's talking about, is making up a lie, and spreading that lie to an ignorant audience. Here is my surprised face again.
Ironheart is clearly a consequence of Marvel greenlighting a show for Disney Plus without thinking, which is why they released it in bulk, because they quietly understood that nobody was asking for anything involving this character. The show began filming in 2022, only to get shelved for 3 years, which is well after the writing strikes ended. They didn't even bother marketing it until a month before its release. Marvel Studios clearly understood that this was a show dead on arrival, which is why they wanted to quickly release it and then never address it again. You yourself are never going to bring up or think about the show again, Birdbrain, because all throughout your video up to this point, you have never actually said anything praiseworthy of the show. All you've done is act like an utter contrarian to people pointing out noticeable issues with the show, where you respond with either straw men or easily refutable points that had no thought put into them whatsoever. And I suspect that this is going to be the exact same case with the Critical Drinker.
Having suffered through the first 3 episodes now, I can confidently say that this is by far the worst thing Marvel have ever produced in nearly 20 years of MCU history.
In what world does this lunatic live where that's even remotely a normal opinion? It's nearly impossible for this show to be worse than Secret Invasion, so we know this is bullshit.
How do we know that it's impossible for it to be worse than Secret Invasion? Can you actually elaborate on what makes Ironheart a better show? Again, you have yet to bring up any redeeming quality for it. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Secret Invasion is in fact worse than Ironheart. That still doesn't make Ironheart a good show. Something being the worst doesn't automatically mean that you can no longer have other things that are also just bad. You're completely failing at making any sort of point here.
Even if I believe that he believes that, and let's be clear, I don't. Isn't this just the latest of the ridiculous hyperbolic statements you always make? Nearly every single media property you review is a disaster. All except yours, strangely.
Critical Drinker making a bad movie has nothing to do with whether or not the points of his reviews are correct or not. If a guy's business goes bankrupt, he's still correct if he says that 2 + 2 = 4. Also, you accusing him of not believing that Ironheart is bad without anything to substantiate that claim is actually proof of you actively choosing to be bad faith. In other words, a grifter. It's entirely possible that Drinker genuinely believes that the quality of MCU projects have been getting progressively worse.
Shut up, you dumb slave. We live in an age of white supremacy. If black people can be unjustly assumed to be criminals without any proof, then I should be allowed to call salty-ass white crackers like Critical Drinker liars without any proof. It's called eye for an eye, idiot.
Grammy Flash always used to say the trouble with an eye for an eye is that everybody ends up blind.
I mean, if I searched for the word disaster on your channel, every other video's title would have the word disaster in it. You are the king of bullshit hyperbole. Oh, and these are 2 entirely different videos, by the way. I know it's hard to tell, what with them both having exactly the same title and exactly the same thumbnail, and some of you tried to argue that this man isn't a grifter.
So your evidence of him being a grifter is sticking to a formula that YouTube's algorithm rewards? Echoing a point from my first part, wouldn't that also make you a grifter too? And I also notice how you don't actually address anything he said in the videos you listed, because once again, you can't be bothered to actually back up what you're claiming.
A cringe-inducing calamity of a show drenched in identity politics that have aged worse than Mickey Rourke's face.
This is a blatant lie.
I agree. Mickey Rourke doesn't look that bad.
Never mind, I take it back!
This show is not drenched in identity politics. He is lying to you. He has a problem with a certain character simply existing. That's it. We'll get there when we get there, but you won't have to wait long.
This show was marketed with identity politics being a selling point. The entire premise of the show is dedicated to giving the main character a pass for being a criminal because of her identity. The only reason the character was created in the first place was because of identity politics. And you being unwilling to acknowledge any of this just further sinks your credibility. So keep at it.
Weighed down by hammy acting and nonsensical dialogue, a protagonist who's willing to lie, cheat and steal just to repeat something that's already been done decades ago, a moral compass that changes depending on who it's applied to, and characters so obnoxiously cliched and stereotypical that they feel like a parody of corporate social justice programs. In short, Ironheart is a creative, logical and probably financial disaster. And the worst possible thing that could happen to Marvel in a year when it's already staring down the barrel of 3 high-profile flops.
Okay, so he's just outright predicting the Fantastic Four will be a flop. I can't wait to see how he tries to erase this from history when that film doesn't flop. I mean, the pre-sales were the best first-day sales of 2025 until Superman went on sale, and basically every box office tracker is predicting it to make almost all of its production budget on its opening weekend. Needless to say, this gon' be good.
I couldn't have responded to this video at a better time because Fantastic Four First Steps was in fact a flop at the box office, thus making Critical Drinker's prediction correct. Before the news of this broke, I was entirely willing to let Birdbrain have this point because at first it seemed like Drinker just pulled this prediction out of his ass. But as he said in the clip, this has been an absolute terrible year for the MCU as their major blockbuster films have all been commercial failures. So Drinker does in fact deserve some credit for calling it before anyone else did. And what makes this even more embarrassing for Birdbrain is that he simply honed in on the box office prediction point instead of actually addressing the criticism levied at the show. He would have looked bad for cowering away from that point even if he was correct with Fantastic Four's box office performance being a success, but now he just looks worse. But will Birdbrain acknowledge being wrong? Of course he won't, because the guy doesn't have an honest bone in his body. Regardless, I would love to see people bring up to him how it was actually his prediction that ended up being dead wrong to see what kind of excuse he comes up with. To put it into his own words, this gonna be good.
So the show picks up with nobody's favourite character, Riri Williams, a grad student at MIT who's been busted helping other students cheat on their exams for money. Riri's angry because she wants more resources to make Iron Man tech available to everyone and become even more famous than Tony Stark, who apparently only succeeded because he was a billionaire. What the fuck?
As you can see, these grifters share the same brain cell, each of them coming to exactly the same wrong conclusion.
Please stop with the coat, Birdbrain. Everyone who watched the show knows this as a problem. Choosing to portray her as an underdog simply doesn't work when she's established to have options at her disposal. She can go to Wakanda or work at a tech company like Stark Industries. If you want to have a story where she actually overcomes adversity, then she shouldn't have been introduced so soon in Wakanda Forever.
I suspect that when Nerdrotic makes his inevitable Ironheart video, he will say the exact same thing. Tag me in his video when he does it. I could use a good laugh.
And that goes for you guys as well. Let me know in the comments if I should bother responding to his video, respond to Nerdrotic or not, because I'm more than happy to just let this be the finale to this response series unless you guys say otherwise.
You've already been given a free scholarship at the most prestigious university in the entire country and 4 years of funding to construct your very own Iron Man suit, and that's still not enough for you?
Once again, her research project is an Iron Man suit. I don't know why you people think school grants would completely cover the cost of something like that. Tuition alone at MIT is around $60 grand, and the full cost of attendance for students, as stated by MIT themselves, is just under 100 grand. Per year. This means her grant was almost $400,000 just for tuition, housing, and food.
Built in a cave with a box of scraps. How many times does this need to be told to you, you absolute dumbass? And tuition costs are not an excuse, because again, she can just go to some private company and get paid to make her suit along with whatever else she wants. If she can't figure that out, then she's frankly a dumb character, which conversely makes the writers for the show bad writers because this is their awful attempt at writing a smart character. Tony Stark became the CEO of a major company at just 21. Why can't Riri do the same thing?
Do you realize how many people would literally kill to be in your position right now? Do you realize how fucking ridiculously arrogant and entitled this makes you look?
So Drinker is pretending that Riri is complaining here, when actually the opening of the show is her explaining what she was doing to MIT's dean. He's showing on the screen her hustling for the money needed to complete her research, and somehow he thinks she's complaining here.
You're just completely lying now because what the scene actually shows is her getting called out for acting like a victim.
You want me to be small, but I refuse. That's a hot pile of garbage. Trash, and you know it.
Not even the show sides with you here.
You're a liar! You're a liar! You know something that you're not telling us, you slimy scumbag liar!
And again, if she has the time to do pointless schoolwork for broke college kids, why is she unable to do bigger projects for companies to make more money? Her entire goal is to mass produce her technology to help people, so it doesn't even conflict with her stated goals or motivations. Nothing she's doing makes any sense.
This man's media literacy is almost as dogshit as his video quality.
Yeah, fuck you, Drinker, you stupid whore! How dare you use a low-quality clip from a show so you don't get hit with a copyright strike from Disney? I hate you!
Also, I hate to break it to you, sweetheart, but there's a very obvious reason why Iron Man suits aren't widely available in this world, and if you stop to think about it for just a second, I'm pretty sure you'll figure it out too.
Well, it's mainly because they're prohibitively expensive, along with requiring a genius to build. which is her point.
Holy shit, how do you miss his point this fucking hard? I know you're looking for any excuse to be a contrarian to make your video longer, but come on, man. Drinker's point was clearly talking about how having Iron Man suits widely available to the public would be a hilariously bad idea. Iron Man 2 communicated this in the most blunt way possible. Even the first Iron Man made clear to the viewer that he does not want his technology being used in the wrong hands.
I saw young Americans killed by the very weapons I created to defend them and protect them.
And that is why, effective immediately, I am shutting down the weapons manufacturer division.
But this is Iron Man's legacy. He very specifically stated he wanted to put a suit of armor around the world, and his attempt at accomplishing this was the Iron Legion and Ultron. The MCU presents Tony's wish as logically sound, as not accomplishing this goal is one of the reasons Thanos was able to achieve a victory, as stated in Avengers Endgame.
That what we needed was a suit of armor around the world. Remember that? Whether it impacted our precious freedoms or not. That's what we needed.
Well, that didn't work out, did it?
I said we'd lose. You said, we'll do that together too. And guess what, Cap? We lost. And you weren't there.
I have no idea what kind of point you're even trying to make here, because Tony's goal is in opposition to Riri's because he wants limits on who can use his technology, while Riri wants people to have wider access to it. He wouldn't side with Riri and would throw her in jail like the other heroes who sided against him in Civil War.
Anyway, when Riri rightfully gets expelled for causing massive property damage and subverting the school exam system, she does the logical thing and steals the Iron Man suit that she already built with university funding and takes it for herself.
This is, once again, a blatant lie. The show explicitly states that this is her suit that she built with her own money.
Why are you guys doing this to Riri?
We're just here to make sure she doesn't take anything that's not hers.
I would never. She built that with her own grant money.
The problem was she uses an AI that requires her to have access to MIT's student privileges, and since she was expelled, she loses that access and thus can't fly her suit.
She used her grant money to build it, so it wasn't her money. It was the school's, which came with certain conditions. And if you check MIT's website, they outright tell you this. Generally, MIT owns intellectual property which you develop in either of the following scenarios: during a sponsored research project, or using significant MIT funds or facilities. Both apply to Riri. If a student uses this grant money and gets expelled, then they would no longer have access to what they were working on because it belongs to the university, not the student, which makes Riri a thief. How can you be so dumb to assert that this line of dialogue makes your case when instead it just outright proves you wrong?
How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
You know, for a show that's all about challenging racial stereotypes, you're really not sending out the message you think you are with this one.
Once again, sharing that brain cell with Ass, who we definitely know is a racist. I wonder what that makes you, Will.
Oh no! You fucked up big time, Drinker! He used your real name! Daddy Birdman is not playing around anymore, so get your butt ready because you're about to get spanked!
Anyway, Riri's trying to scrape together enough money to repair her suit. Life is hard when you actually have to work and pay for stuff, isn't it?
He says this as if she wasn't working and paying for stuff. How do you not understand that she was doing the homework for other students and earning money for doing that? It was literally at the very beginning of the first episode. Like, literally in the first 3 minutes of the show. You explicitly showed that footage.
Helping people cheat on their assignments is not what I, along with the vast majority of other people, would consider to be work, Birdbraid.
When she's approached by a guy named Parker, who offers the chance to join his ethnically and sexually diverse criminal gang, including this, unique individual. What even is this show, man?
Just blatant bigotry here.
What was bigoted about what he said? He simply said that this person looks ridiculous, and you're allowed to have that opinion.
One of his criticisms of the show is about the actor. Not even the character. The actor. I'll never understand how this channel is not only monetized, but actively promoted by YouTube while clearly breaking YouTube's terms of service.
And here we have Birdbrain throwing the last of his integrity away by resorting to whining about YouTube not taking away Drinker's income over something he hasn't actually done. All because he's criticizing a show. And if you can believe it, This isn't even the first time he's done it.
But then, like a knight in rainbow-coloured armour, a saviour arrived to take up the mantle.
So just blatant homophobia now? I mean, we already knew you were a bigot, but what I want to know is how the fuck are you still monetized on YouTube? I mean, it says it right here. Hateful and derogatory content.
Whether Birdbrain realizes it or not, he's actually communicating why YouTube shouldn't have these bullshit rules in the first place because 1, idiots like Birdbrain will just abuse it by misrepresenting what someone said so it fits the criteria for the rule violation, and 2, it doesn't at all stop or prevent hate from being spread on YouTube because it doesn't apply to people like Birdbrain who get to be as hateful and malicious as they want.
And newsflash, black people kinda like hip-hop. Well, real black people and not the trash pandas that you know.
If this policy can easily be abused and doesn't even serve its intended purpose, why do we even have it at all?
In return for using her Iron Man suit to help them steal from people, she'll get all the money and resources she needs. And because stealing and breaking the law is only bad if other people do it, Riri immediately accepts his offer.
Except that's another blatant lie. Riri almost immediately attempts to leave when she finds out who these people are. Parker manipulates her by lying where the exit is and then shows her the money, convincing her to stay. Like, why lie about this stuff? We can easily provide footage of this not being the case.
You know, when you're ready for the respect and the money you deserve, come work for me.
No.
That's a closet.
I'm not getting back on that elevator.
Let me show you another way. So what's it gonna cost? To get you to change your mind. Consider this a signing bonus.
I assume these jobs aren't exactly legal.
And not exactly.
Look, I don't want to hurt anyone.
Theft, extortion, breaking and entering.
Why?
Why do you make iron suits? I'm sure you have a good reason why you do what you do. And I have reasons of my own. Join me, and I will give you the tools to help you carry out your vision. ASAP. So you in or out?
Better be worth it.
She immediately accepts his offer, huh? I mean, I can understand lying about a movie that's in theaters where it's harder to get footage, but a TV show on a widely available streaming platform? Are you dumb?
So your rebuttal to Drinker criticizing Riri becoming a criminal for money is acknowledging that she becomes a criminal for money? Where's the lie? Throughout his video, he doesn't prove anyone he's responding to wrong. He simply fixates over a minor detail that doesn't matter at all and completely misses the point being made. Why does this guy have the reputation of being a destroyer of bad takes online when his arguments are all complete shit?
Like, you realize you could just take this kind of technology to any major tech firm in the country and they'd give you so much cash you could swim in it, right?
But then they would own the suit because they put up the money and would likely attempt to rob her of her intellectual property. It's like, did you not watch Iron Man 2 where the US government tried that exact thing? It's literally why War Machine exists. And you really should stop trying to rewrite Marvel stories and focus on letting Mauler ghostwrite yours, Drake.
What are you talking about? Why are you assuming that this is automatically going to be the case anywhere she goes? How do you know that's what will happen if she goes to Stark Industries? How do you know that she won't be able to negotiate having sole ownership of her suit in return for other services she provides? This is what your brain looks like when you convince yourself that working a 9-to-5 job for a corporation is the same as selling your soul to Satan, and that being a jobless bum is where you'll find peak moral enlightenment.
Or how about Wakanda? They seem like they'd be more than happy to have someone of your talents on boards.
See? That brain cell is getting a real workout. In any case, we don't even know if she can contact the people of Wakanda. Man-Ape is the king now, and we don't know his policies regarding the usage of Wakandan tech. All we know is that Shuri didn't allow it to leave Wakanda. Riri is a genius. I'm sure if she could contact Wakanda, she would have done so by now. And even then, she probably wouldn't want to after selling the car that Shuri had fully restored. Might be an awkward conversation she doesn't want to have.
Yeah, so this is all complete nonsense, and I've addressed it before in previous videos. Riri has no justifiable reason to not immediately go to Wakanda for help to see what they can do for her after helping them out in the past. And saying, she's embarrassed as an excuse is a cope response.
Oh yeah, and she also hooks up with a black market arms dealer who for some reason is a total pussy that immediately caves into her demands, gives her everything she wants, and acts like a complete simp for the rest of the show. Oh my goodness, what are the chances that the one and only white guy in this show would turn out to be a completely submissive pussy?
Do you all see my earlier point? How Tyrone claimed the criminals were minorities based on stereotypes, and how this dipshit thinks the white guy was made a pussy because he's white? It's these guys that makes everything about identity politics. They can't just be characters in a show. They have to be culture war talking points every single time. Alden is not even the only white guy. Sacha Baron Cohen is in this show, and Drinker's leaving out that by the end of the second episode, Joe has learned to stick up for himself, and in the third episode, Joe is the one blackmailing Riri, forcing her to do what he wants.
But today is not really a good day for me, so rain check?
No.
Excuse me?
I said no. You're gonna help me as much as I need, or I'm gonna tell your mom how we really know each other. So take a gander at these, and I will see you at my place tomorrow. Is 6 good? I'm sorry, what am I saying? 6 is good.
See you then. Thanks for teaching me to stand up for myself.
Gives her everything she wants and acts like a complete simp for the rest of the show. It's like a complete simp for the rest of the show.
So that was a fucking lie.
Yeah, I don't know what point Drinker is trying to make by saying Ezekiel Stain is a simp, because that isn't true. But he is correct in pointing out that Riri gets away with being a complete bitch to him and ruining his life while suffering no consequences because of it, despite also committing crimes. And the show communicates that you're not really supposed to care because he's not Riri. At no point does she redeem herself by helping him out. And if the races were reversed, Birdbrain would in fact acknowledge it as being more of a problem, because something he has made clear is that he is perfectly fine with double standards.
Anyway, I think we've all had enough anti-Ironheart videos for one sitting. They're all like this. No attempt to actually engage with or understand the material, comically blatant bigotry, and the grifter specialty, outright lies. This is why media discourse is no longer fun, because these people not only poisoned it with their large followings where people repeat their nonsense without themselves ever watching the material or checking to see if what their favorite psychopath said was true, but also because it takes too much energy to refute this level of diluted nonsense, so people don't even try.
Everything he's bitching about here is just projection of his own insecurities. It's not that people aren't engaging with what the show is, it's that they acknowledge that the show is failing in what it set out to do. There's no bigotry to be found from any of the people he covered, simply Birdbrain angry over them not deep-throating an MCU show with a black lead. And most of the lies are simply himself telling lies so he can attack strawmen.
It's not a coincidence that the large grifters didn't make a video on Sinners, or if they did so very late and uploaded the videos to their second channels, where it would be nice and buried, safely away from the eyes of their regular audience, but immediately jumped on this property the second it was released. That's because they're not reviewers, they're outrage merchants.
Or could it be that they didn't find Sinners to be bad, which is why they didn't make videos on it calling it bad? The video you show from Drinker doesn't even prove the point you're trying to make, because he said that it's a good movie.
So apparently it's not enough that I've been gushing about this movie on social media for the past couple of weeks and talking about it like every open bar. It seems like I just can't complete my character arc unless I give you a full video review of it. So, okay, fine, I guess you win. Sinners is a really good movie. In fact, it's probably Ryan Coogler's best work of his career.
What was that about grifters not watching something before they criticize it?
There is no real attempt at criticism, just trying to make the audience as outraged as possible. Where can Marvel improve the story? What could be changed to make the show better? How could the pacing improve? Whose dialogue can be tweaked to allow exposition to flow better? None of these questions are answered, and instead, they get upset that an LGBTQ person simply exists in the show. That's because these people are not reviewers. They're culture warriors. They're not giving real opinions and analysis. They're saying what they think the audience wants to hear. Their content is low-effort garbage, easily pumped out conveyor belt slop, ready-made with the latest talking points, which is why you'll hear the same things from different people over and over, begging the question, why listen to any of them when they don't have an original thought between them? They have no integrity because they sold their souls a long time ago. They are digital prostitutes, willing to do anything for $1. They are everything they claim the other side is, only much fouler, more crass, and far, far more stupid. For far too long, these morons have been spreading their rhetoric unabated, unchallenged, and with resistance they could simply ignore. But unfortunately for all of them, I exist.
So with that last clip out of the way, I want to give my honest thoughts on Birdman after having fully responded to him. For someone who likes to say that he's debunking grifters, he's the best example that comes to mind of an actual grifter. There's no purpose to his video besides getting people angry over other content creators while laughably failing at proving their criticisms of a show wrong, and in the process showing that he is a complete hypocrite by using every tactic he attributes to grifters. Not once does he actually say what he likes about the show, outside of a black woman starring in it, because he doesn't actually care about it. He simply wants to make a seasonal video where he rambles incoherently because he knows people will like it despite not caring about the quality of his arguments whatsoever. And if Birdman is watching this, I would just like to say that you make bad content. Nobody hates you for being black, they just hate you for being yourself. You need to take more showers because I could smell your unwashed ass through my screen. Your stupidity rubs off on Blanca along with everyone else who suffers through your videos. And if you ever respond to anything I've said in my videos, I'll be ready.
Stop. Stop. Cut it out. Knock it off. What, do you want me to say it in Japanese? Yamero. Stop what, you ask? Stop allowing these motherfuckers to claim they are not racist. Nerdrotic, aka Gary Beekler, is a racist. Jeremy Griggs is a racist. Will Jordan is a racist. These people and their orbiters exemplify everything this series is meant to combat. Farming and harvesting outrage, whining about women in basically any piece of media they appear in, pretending they are fans or former fans of the things they incessantly cry about. And racism. But the pussy kind of racism that the KKK employ. You know, hiding under bed sheets so they can live their lives in peace during the day while terrorizing black people at night. That's what these people do, only they've modernized the Klan tactics, hiding their racism behind hilariously weak media critiques that could have come from a Cracker Jack box.
So we just started the video and already we have a truly batshit comparison of online criticism being no different from the Ku Klux Klan, an actual hate group that has killed people and burdened several groups for decades. It's one thing to say that people are using criticism as a defense when they're really just being dicks, but claiming what they're doing is at all equivalent to violent racist hate crimes of the past is not only a completely delusional takeaway, but an insult to all the actual victims of the KKK. Birdbrain desperately wants to be a victim so bad, and it's pathetic.
Poor writing this, slop that. Meanwhile, a 12-year-old could write the latest Critical Drinker video and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers just reads articles you could have read yourself and repeats himself for 10 minutes. Nerdrotic waits for his master Critical Drinker to make a video and then repeats nearly everything he says, like the good little puppy that he is. These people have next to no insight to offer. It's just the same bullshit over and over. Video after video of these people complaining when a woman or a black person appears in something. You would think they'd have made their points by now. Everything Disney makes sucks, so you should stop watching what they produce. Right? Aren't those the marching orders? So why is it they continue to watch? Continue to make videos on a subject they've already told you not to watch? Are they not preaching to the choir? The converted are not watching, right? Who are these videos for then, if Disney has fallen off and nobody is watching them anymore?
So now we have Birdbrain showing us once again that there's really nothing going on in that empty head of his, because now he's incapable of understanding what a professional critic is. You would think that after your first video complaining about how grifters won't put their dicks in your ass, it would get the message across that you think they're bad critics and that nobody should give them the time of day. Yet you continue to make videos about them over and over. Also, I love the implication here that he wouldn't have a problem with them still calling Disney shit, but not making reviews justifying themselves, as if that's not grifting behavior. The job of a critic is to review something their audience wants them to review. They don't always get a say. It doesn't matter if they know that they aren't going to like it before seeing it. They need to actually watch it to justify why they disliked it and why it's not worth seeing to their audience. If they primarily want to review a specific genre of film or big budget movies that gets everyone's attention, they are allowed to do that. And if you want to say that their refusal to review indie films or films outside the genre they're interested in impacts their criticism of modern day filmmaking, I would say that's completely fair to point out, but that's not what Birdman is doing here. He's simply complaining about them being negative towards mainstream films. And on the point of them constantly being negative in what they cover, what if everything they're complaining about is actually just bad? I'm not going to act as though I watched these guys to get insights on a film I wouldn't have gone myself on my own. In fact, the strongest criticism I can come up with for all three of these guys is that they could all definitely put in better effort into the scripts for their respective reviews. But them not putting as much effort into a script that they should to convince people better doesn't suddenly make what they're negatively reviewing good by any means. Finally, Birdbrain said some bird shit about them always automatically hating something with a woman or minority in it. And my response to that is to simply say, show me proof of that being the case. If you can't substantiate that, then I'm simply going to regard it as meaningless hyperbole and move on. With the amount of race baiting you constantly pull, you are the most racist than any of these other jokers being covered.
Welcome to the grift. Today, we're going to take Nerdrotic's necrotic take on Ironheart to task. We already know what this Fruit Loop's problem with this character is. And no, Warlock Master Race, it's not because she's poorly written, as if you could know that about a show that won't be out for over a month from only a trailer, you parrot dipshit. It's because she's black, and to a lesser extent, a female. I mean, look at the thumbnail. He's showing Robert Downey Jr. in blackface from an entirely unrelated movie. Don't you wonder why he would do something like that?
Well, yes, because Robert Downey Jr. played Iron Man, the character Riri Williams is replacing. Did you forget this? Because that's the joke.
Greetings, you over 1 million hellions and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. There is a handful of characters that personify everything wrong with Marvel Comics and now Marvel Studios, including but not limited to Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel, no, not Miss Marvel from the comics Captain Marvel, Sana Amanat's self-insert Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel, and Riri Williams as Ironheart.
Did you notice that all of the characters he showed were either non-white or female? So the female and non-white characters are the problem with Marvel Comics, you say? Marvel Comics, the company that went bankrupt in the 90s and had to sell their characters piecemeal, an event that led to Sony making terrible Spider-Man movies that don't feature Spider-Man. That Marvel Comics.
And we're still getting projects just as bad featuring lazy knockoffs of characters people actually care about, such as a terrible Iron Man show without Iron Man.
No, Marvel Comics were in dire straits long before Ironheart and Kamala Khan, particularly due to the fact that they went bankrupt before those characters even existed. That's right, the company that created the X-Men couldn't keep things afloat before so-called wokeism.
Of course! Marvel made shitty decisions before, so they certainly can't make shitty decisions now! You're so clever, Daddy Birdman! Please have my babies, you absolute stud!
But what bites my ass is that it's not these characters that makes it difficult to float as a comic book company. The industry has struggled since its inception. Comics have always been a niche product. Even during the so-called heyday of the MCU, comic sales never reached the highs of the 60s or the 80s, and that's mainly because nobody in the West likes to fucking read anymore.
Then why is manga comparably an overwhelming success? People sure seem to go out of their way to pick those up at bookstores, so why not comic books? Luckily, I know the answer. Publishers like Marvel Comics don't actually hire based on talent, sales, or reader feedback like in Japan. They don't care about writing the characters that have been handed to them faithfully, and will instead create cheap drama to pull readers in by having their love interests get fucked by literal whos, butcher their characterization because of something stupid that was done with them in the MCU, or just have them act completely out of character outright to deliver ham-fisted viewpoints from the person writing them. This is why people consider modern writers' handling of Spider-Man, X-Men, and legacy characters in general to be the worst of all time in its history. They stopped caring, so readers gradually stopped caring too.
Back in the 50s, Marvel, then known as Atlas Comics, had to deal with the Comics Code authorities stifling artistic expression, something that directly led to declining sales. When Ron Perelman bought Marvel in the 80s, he contributed to the company's bankruptcy by spending hundreds of millions of dollars to acquire a doomed toy company in the hopes to capitalize on the collectibles boom, not realizing that speculation isn't the same as sustainability. Perelman turned Marvel into a bubble, pumping out endless variant covers and hollow crossover events to milk short-term sales while burning long-term goodwill with readers. That was greed and corporate vampirism. And when that bubble inevitably popped in the 90s, it wasn't because Spider-Man was black or because Carol Danvers got a haircut. Those versions of the characters weren't even on the scene yet. It was because the suits at the top treated comics like penny stocks instead of stories. The truth is, Marvel's biggest threats have always come from inside the house. Mismanagement, corporate overreach, and short-sighted business models, not from giving the spotlight to a Pakistani-American girl who stretches her arms or a black girl in a suit of armor. So when these grifters cry that Marvel's downfall is due to forced diversity, they're either ignorant of history or deliberately distorting it.
Are you even listening to yourself? How can you say that the issues are internal, but don't extend to the creative decisions being made? You just criticize shit like hollow crossover events, which is an issue with the writing. We're still getting hollow crossover events, only now we're also getting hollow replacements of characters themselves because nobody knows how to create interesting original characters anymore. You say the issues with modern day comics has to do with short-sighted business models, but forced diversity is in fact a short-sighted business model that companies use.
All three are derivative characters of a male hero, some are derivatives of derivatives. All three were developed for the comics solely based on their identity to push inclusivity, and that's the exact same reason they were rushed into the MCU.
What are you even arguing here, Gary? The alternative is to shoehorn white male characters, something we have quite enough of. The original X-Men featured 4 white men and 1 white woman. The Fantastic Four debuted with 3 white guys and 1 white woman. The original Avengers had 4 white men and 1 white woman. That is until Captain America showed up to replace the Hulk, in which case another white man joined the team. Hell, the MCU's Avengers were again 5 white men and 1 white woman. Let's do the math, guys. That's 21 white characters, 17 men and 4 women across 3 iconic teams and 2 different mediums. 50% of the population is somehow a minority here, and literally everyone is white. Stan Lee literally created Black Panther specifically because Marvel was only outputting white characters and their black readers had no representation. And you're mad because we've got 1 Pakistani woman? Amazing.
You describing these characters like this only communicates to me that the only thing that matters to you is race and that you don't like white people. All of these characters have more to them than simply their skin color because they were introduced with the purpose of telling a good story, including Black Panther. Not simply for the sake of inclusivity. The point Gary is making, besides these characters being derivative of other characters, is that there's nothing compelling about them. Your best attempt at painting Kamala Khan and Riri Williams in a favorable light was describing them as a Pakistani girl who could stretch her arms, and a black girl in armor, which just goes to show how uninteresting they are. If someone described Reed Richards and Tony Stark as a white guy who could stretch his arms and a white guy in armor as the selling points, I would say those characters sound equally uncompelling too. But anyone who is an actual fan of those characters understands that what makes them interesting goes beyond their race or powers. If somebody pushed an original non-white character that brought something unique and compelling to the table without unnecessarily pushing an established character aside, nobody would complain.
In the comics, all three have been repeatedly pushed on a fan base that absolutely rejects them.
That doesn't even make sense. These are characters in a book. Besides school, how are books being pushed on you? You either buy them or you don't. Literally, no one has a gun to your head, you fake-ass victim. If you don't like the characters, don't buy the books and don't watch media they appear in. Why are you making simple choices sound like they are killing you? I don't like lima beans, so I don't buy them because I'm an adult and I can make that choice. You don't see me making videos about Big Lima Bean and some conspiracy about Kathleen Kennedy forcing the vegetable on me.
The only person crying about victimization here is you, Birdbrain, considering you compared these guys to the KKK terrorizing black people. And yes, these characters are getting pushed despite nobody asking for them. And longtime fans are allowed to voice their grievances when the only option people like you give them is to stop being fans of the comics they have spent considerable time and money on.
Leading to all 3 of them being featured in multiple canceled comics.
How is it possible that you ran a comic book store and don't understand the end of a run? You're literally showing on the screen a blurb saying the series ended, not was canceled. Eve Ewing, the author of that run, stated clearly the run was supposed to be 12 issues and that her first solo title would wrap with the 12th issue. All arcs and storylines in that series were concluded. Here's a scan of the last page from that issue. See how it says "The End" and how the back of the book teases her return in a team-up? You're clearly lying to your audience, and I mean that both ways because Ironheart had a second solo run that began in 2020, and she even got a one-shot this very year. Looking very not canceled there, huh, Gary? But you get away with this lie because your audience won't check and apparently appreciate being blatantly lied to.
How can you be a comic book fan and not understand that a series that was never presented as a limited series, announcing that its run is ending, is code for its sales being terrible and that it's being cancelled? The fact that it has a rushed and abrupt ending doesn't change the fact that it was cancelled. This is a common tactic that we're seeing from comic publishers so they can avoid saying that their series were cancelled to save face. If you actually wanted to challenge Gary's point effectively, you would point out that series centered around non-legacy characters not named Spider-Man also get cancelled within the same number of issues now, which points to more of a problem with the writers and not inherently the characters, because they know they'll be rehired and be given continuous second chances even if they do a shit job, because they're all Nepo babies. But of course that requires you to call something bad, which your worthless slop-eating ass isn't going to do.
Fuck you, Chud! These comic writers clearly understand what makes these characters compelling and know how to write them properly. You're just a dumb bigot that should do a flip off a building. Now excuse me while I spend some time reading this Harley Quinn fart fetish comic. Woo!
Which in turn was the spark that led to the beginning of the decline that continues to this very day for Marvel Comics.
Another headline taken out of its context. What a surprise. The article Gary is showing here is from The Guardian. In this article, the author puts words in David Gabriel's mouth, claiming he blamed declining sales on Marvel's increased diversity. The claim that diversity tanked Marvel's sales is a lie built on a misquote. What actually happened was that David was interviewed by ICV2 and was reporting feedback from a few shops and how they were dealing with the economy in late 2016. The economy at that time experienced slowdown, particularly due to Trump's incumbency. As David goes on to say, during an economic slowdown, most people tend to stick to the familiar, so they mainly purchase books from classic heroes. He states that for the past 3 years, comic book readers were supporting the diversity and that this change was sudden, something the company had to react to. He then goes on to clarify that diverse characters like Miss Marvel, Jane Foster's Thor, and Miles Morales had strong, enthusiastic readerships and that the company would continue producing them. It's almost like whenever you actually dig into what these grifters say, you find out they're lying and didn't actually read the sources they produce.
So once again, we get more delusional cope from Birdbrain. Even though the sales for these characters are objectively shit and the readers themselves do not want badly written diverse characters being pushed, he blames the lack of sales or interest in them on Donald Trump, as if he and his supporters have this weird stigma against comic books. Unfortunately, this explanation makes zero sense because when Biden was in office, we didn't suddenly see these characters becoming super popular and the overall sentiment towards them remained the same, with people still preferring the originals. I also like how he includes the vice president of sales doubling down on Marvel's mistakes as if that doesn't prove the point Gary was making, which is that Marvel is refusing to learn from their mistakes. But what I love even more is that even when this guy is filleting all these shitty titles because that's his job, he still doesn't mention Ironheart, which is hilarious. It's a pretty embarrassing thing to include in your video defending Ironheart, though.
Coincidentally, with just 2 of those 3 characters, Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel, the same thing is happening to Marvel Studios. And now it looks like Kevin Feige is determined to repeat all of the mistakes of the comic books and lead to the same failures by finally releasing Ironheart. So that's right, in the year of our Lord 2020, on December 10th, Kevin Feige announced there was going to be an Ironheart series. Admittedly, these were the days that Marvel thought they could do no wrong. The series was rushed into development, and she made her first iconic appearance in Wakanda Forever. Then, upon the completion of production on Ironheart 3 years ago, Kevin Feige actually watched it, and thanks to the worst time strikes in history, he was able to kick that can as far down the road as he could. Don't believe me? Well, aside from the fact that this show has again been on the shelf for 3 years.
Nerdrotic, like his master Will Jordan, apparently doesn't know shit about film production. Newsflash, genius, most films and TV shows don't come out immediately after they are filmed.
They also don't just sit on a shelf somewhere collecting dust for 3 years. That doesn't happen unless something is seriously wrong with a project.
Sometimes there are issues within production that causes work to be done later than usual, and in this case, the series was affected by the strikes of 2023, something you mentioned but don't seem to understand the significance of. The show was principally filmed in late 2022. They needed to do additional photography, but then the strikes happened in mid-2023, so they couldn't film until 2024, which they did. Then the show was edited in 2024. So no, Ironheart was not on the shelf for 3 years because production wasn't completed until last year. You are once again lying to your gullible audience.
The strikes causing some delay is one thing, but saying that delaying its release for a total of 3 years to do some editing and 2 days of reshoots just shows how completely gullible you are, as this combined with a lack of marketing of the show and dropping all of the episodes within a 2-week period just communicates that the showrunners knew that they had a chore on their hands the same way Amazon Studios did with that shitty War of the Worlds remake that was delayed for 5 years. But let me guess. I'm a racist conspiracy theorist for coming to that conclusion for this film too, because it stars a black male lead with Ice Cube, right?
Obviously, you dickhole! This was easily the funniest film I've seen all year!
It's you! It's you! How could you, man? How could you? My own son is hacking the government.
Ironheart has already broken what I believe will be a lot of unfortunate records. The first trailer for Ironheart broke the record for the shortest amount of time between any live-action MCU project's first trailer and its release. The previous record holder, Daredevil Born Again. How did that turn out?
Pretty fucking sweet. Or are you now going to tell us Daredevil Born Again was a terrible show?
It was, and you hiding behind positive reviews doesn't change it from being a terrible continuation of the original show. Even other reviewers who dislike Nerdrotic like Southpaw and Esky agree that the show's writing is subpar, whose respective videos on it I encourage my viewers to check out because their criticisms are as good as anything I could point out.
Now, the word on the street is that if Disney Marvel had its way, just like with Echo, they wouldn't release this, but they have to, so the best thing to do would be to either dump it all at once or delay it as much as possible. And now that we've seen some behind-the-scenes footage and the trailer, we know why. There is 2 schools of thought here. The big brains at Marvel either decided to release the Ironheart trailer just hours before James Gunn's Superman to compete with it, or to bury it. I report you decide. Either way, neither of them worked.
Now you sound like CinemaSins with his dumbass prediction about Civil War versus Batman v Superman. These are not even competing products. One is a TV show about a legacy character, the other is a feature film about Superman. You can literally watch both. I have no idea why you people think you can't eat peanut butter with your chocolate.
Okay, so this criticism frustrates me to no end because it completely contradicts what this idiot said as a previous defense, which is that the reason the Ironheart episodes weren't released in a traditional weekly format was so that it wouldn't compete with the release of Fantastic Four First Steps.
Once again, dipshit grifters act as if the SAG-AFTRA strikes didn't majorly affect the industry. The show's producer clearly states that the strikes affected their release schedule and that they didn't want their content competing with each other. This tracks, as Marvel will have released 3 films this year, and they were spaced out enough to allow each one to have its theatrical run and digital release before the next film released. If this 6-episode show did a week-to-week release, with June 24th being its first day, its 6th episode would have come out days after Fantastic Four's release, something I'm sure Disney wanted to avoid. These are not even competing products. One is a TV show about a legacy character, the other is a feature film about Superman. You can literally watch both. I have no idea why you people think you can't eat peanut butter with your chocolate.
You're arguing with yourself now, Burbrae, so which is it? Were you an idiot then, or are you an idiot now?
And this may be another reason they delayed the footage until the last possible minute, because it looks like it's heading towards an iconic ratio.
Oh wow, YouTube dislikes, the pinnacle of internet discourse. I'm sure those people that left a dislike on a trailer for a black comic book character thought long and hard about that trailer they'd just seen and were not acting out behavior that people like you, geeks and gamers, and the quartering have taught them. Right? I mean, because that would be completely unbelievable. People trolling and dislike brigading on the internet? In any case, these methods to see the dislikes on a YouTube video are famously unreliable. One of the more popular methods, the Return YouTube Dislike plugin, uses a seriously strange algorithm that divides the behavior of the site's users and then multiplies that by the public like count. This is very obviously going to give ridiculous dislike totals, and we have a very clear example of this on one of Mr. Beast's videos, where this plugin gave the dislike total of that video as being over 1 million, only for Mr. Beast to confirm the like to dislike ratio on that video was actually 99% positive with only 20,000 dislikes. I can also confirm this myself. This commenter thought one of my videos got ratioed when, even though I did get brigaded by Critical Drinker's psychopathic followers, the video still clearly has far more likes than dislikes, not even close to a ratio. That said, I have no doubt this video has a bunch of dislikes. It's a black superhero property in 2025 after all. I'm just saying that no one should trust these numbers.
And once again, he doesn't accept the idea that there's any genuine dislike towards this show. But if you suggest that the opposite is true and that a lot of the praise is artificially manufactured, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist.
But I tell you, there's no happier guy on earth that Ironheart got delayed so long it came out after Sinners, which I liked, than executive producer Ryan Coogler.
I got into Marvel as a kid, going to comic book shops. I was really big on X-Men and all of the offshoots, like X-Factor and Wolverine. When Ironheart came out, I remember the buzz around the industry.
Okay, first off, why in the hell would you show this cover? It's one of the worst in comic book history. It's like somebody cut a girl in half and put 2 deer legs on the bottom.
Hey Gary, you see the big 1 on the top left corner? Yeah, that number indicates the first. And as Ryan was talking about the buzz surrounding the title upon its debut, that's why they're showing the first cover. And now, children, we will learn subtraction.
Okay, so 1, you didn't disagree that the art looks crappy. 2, this issue isn't her first appearance. And 3, variant covers with better art exist. If you're going to be a nitpicking asshole, I'm going to be a nitpicking asshole too.
Now, if by buzz you mean the 45th best-selling comic the month Ironheart came out, which sold 40,000 copies, which admittedly comic shops would kill for those kind of numbers, but the reason we don't get numbers like that anymore is because you kept releasing comics like Ironheart.
What Gary isn't showing you is that literally everything above Ironheart is an ongoing series or about well-established characters with decades of comic book history. The only exception was Firefly, a comic based on the canceled cult classic TV show, which, again, is something based on an established property. Not only does this mean Ironheart's debut went incredibly well, as the book's numbers were within 10,000 of the top 20, Gary also fails to mention that these lists are usually based on a top 500. Like, look at the 500th place book, The Amazing Spider-Man number 8. See what happens when you have the full context?
No way! Ironheart sold more copies than Spider-Man? Well, this just proves what I've been saying for years! Forget about getting him back together with that slut MJ! We need to cut off his dick, put him in blackface, and make him gay! This is how you get people to read comics again!
So if you actually look at the publication date for this specific Spider-Man issue, you'll find that it was released in October and not November, which is what this top 500 list is covering. In the previous month, that issue was in the top 10 for the month of October, and was still sought after to be listed in the month of November, which is impressive. And while the first issue of Ironheart getting to the top 50 can be considered impressive for a legacy character using Iron Man's likeness, which is why Gary at no point says that accomplishment is bad, the real accomplishment is if it maintains the momentum. But if we look at Ironheart's own 8th issue, we'll see that it has had a massive decline, with 30,000 readers choosing to not stick around, which caused it to go from 45th to 207th. That's a flop however you look at it.
And in 2019, when the Ironheart Volume 1 trade paperback Those with Courage was released, it was the 328th best-selling book of the year, selling a whopping 2,640 copies to comic shops.
Another fudging of the numbers. First of all, Gary doesn't forget these lists are ranked all the way up to the multiple hundreds this time. Very curious. And second, the book he's referring to is a $20 compilation of the first 6 books in her original solo series. I'll say that one more time. Gary is using a reissue compilation to make the point that she was unpopular a year after her run debuted.
Yes, because as I just showed you previously, her sales from her single issues were in the toilet. So it makes sense that the sales of her book collecting several of her issues are in the toilet too.
This is the equivalent of saying the 2025 box office run of Episode 3 proves that movie isn't as financially successful as The Fall Guy. This man is that dishonest.
It's common for Marvel to release their series in collected formats regardless of popularity, so I don't know what point you're trying to make here. And your comparison with Star Wars makes no sense because Ironheart's sales do not reflect the comic book equivalent of box office returns for Revenge of the Sith. You're losing your mind.
And not too long after that, things got so bad in the comic book industry, they stopped reporting sales.
Gary just forgot that a worldwide pandemic happened in 2020, apparently. Also, comic book companies don't report their sales and haven't at least since the time frame we're talking about in 2017. The only company that was doing so was Diamond, a third-party company, which is where these rankings came from. You can see these forum members talking about exactly that in 2017, a year before Ironheart's solo series.
So this is a weird part of the video where Birdbrain randomly inserts himself for some reason and doesn't really refute what Gary said. So he's just wasting our time a bit on something I don't really care about. What's undeniable though is that sales of monthly titles have been in a long-term decline for a while now, and the increased focus on legacy characters with little to no demand like Riri certainly isn't helping those numbers.
That sounds like the perfect thing to adapt and rush into production while spending hundreds of millions of dollars only to sit on it for 3 years.
He's literally contradicting himself here. He says they rushed into production. The series was announced in 2020 and didn't begin filming until 2022. That's not what rush means. And as explained earlier, the series was finished in 2024. They did not sit on the series for 3 years. This man doesn't know what he's talking about at all.
No, he didn't contradict himself at all. A film like War of the Worlds 2025 can be rushed into production only for people to realize that shit afterwards and then release it much later than originally intended in the hopes of making something out of it. If Amazon came out and said that this took 5 years to make, everyone would correctly call them out for lying to save face.
Now, after spending a decade in the comics and half a decade in the movies, taking legacy characters and replacing them with diverse characters because you could just pass the mantle, and just a few months after Sam Wilson officially took over the mantle of Captain America that completely failed, this time they want you to know they're not passing the mantle.
Wholly run on sentence, Batman. He tried to squeeze in so many buzzwords and dog whistles into that soliloquy, he nearly forgot to breathe. I remind you, this is a man that ran a comic book shop but somehow doesn't know what a legacy character is. He just called actual legacy characters diverse characters that are replacing legacy characters. That sentence makes no sense. It's like calling the number 1 2 and saying 2 comes after 2. What? I called him out about this on Twitter, and here he is misusing the term legacy character again. So this isn't him misspeaking. He actually thinks a legacy character is the original character that holds the mantle. This alone should call into question anything he has to say about comic books, because he's clearly a fake fan that thinks having toys in his background lends him credibility.
Yeah, this is a weird line from Nerdrotic. I guess he's trying to say that these characters shouldn't even count as legacy characters because they aren't sufficiently carrying on the respective legacies of the foundational characters they're based on. But it could also be true that he doesn't know what the difference is between a foundational character and a legacy character. I asked him about this on X to get his feedback, but he didn't respond, so I'm 50-50 on this until he or someone else can clarify what he meant.
A lot of people think that she's a successor to the Iron Man legacy, but in the comic book, Riri and Tony had a friendship. He was kind of advising her.
Except she wasn't really advised by Tony Stark because the comic they were showing right there was an AI version because he was dead.
Surprise, surprise, Nerdrotic is once again leaving out context or is simply unaware of that context because he's not a real comic book reader. First of all, Ryan Coogler has no control over the editing of this video. Since the interview is about Ironheart, the editor is simply providing B-roll that somewhat relates to what Ryan is saying, but that's not what Coogler is talking about. He is correct in stating that Tony and Riri had a friendship because he's referring to the 2 runs before Ironheart's solo series, where she's in Iron Man's book leading up to Civil War II in the 2015 series, Invincible Iron Man Volume 3, number 12, and the follow-up to that series, the 2016 volume of Invincible Iron Man, where Riri dons the Iron Man mantle. These books are years older than Ironheart's solo series. What's more is that Nerdrotic is attempting to make a distinction between Tony and his AI construct when the comics themselves don't make that distinction, at least not in the way Gary is trying to. The book treats this AI that was built by Tony himself as a true representation of the character and has all his mannerisms and personality. The second issue explicitly tells us that Tony downloaded his consciousness into this AI, and that is how Williams was trained to fight as Iron Man through the Iron Legion. What I'm saying is, Gary is making a distinction without a difference, a logical fallacy.
So Birdbrain is technically correct here because she does meet Tony before meeting his AI, but I would still say it doesn't really justify their association with each other as a foundational character and a legacy character, because the two have very little in common with each other. Tony became Iron Man out of trauma and realizing that his effects on the world are negative with his weapon manufacturing, and became a hero to make up for it. Riri, though, doesn't have any underlying motivation or justification to be a superhero inspired by Iron Man. Even Ryan Coogler admitted in that clip that Riri isn't really following in Tony's footsteps because she has so little in common with the guy. There needs to be more to Riri for people to actually get invested in her character. Him simply advising her isn't enough, because Tony has done that for several characters over the years, and that's not enough justification for them to be his replacement. For instance, Tony mentored Peter, but it wouldn't make any sense for him to become the new Iron Man.
And eventually, she got her own identity as Ironheart.
The story of Ironheart is not a story about the mantle of Iron Man getting passed. If anything, it's the opposite.
It's really about her proving herself and achieving her own legacy.
Creating your own legacy by stealing everything the legacy character established, including his own book.
That doesn't even make sense. How could the in-universe character steal the out-of-universe book?
Because the writers intentionally made it so that Tony would take a backseat to an inferior character whose only redeeming qualities are things already associated with him. Are you slow?
Why would he say that a character that is assuming a mantle is stealing their book? This fruitcake has Batman's symbol in his background. He would never suggest Damian Wayne stole Batman's books, even though he assumed the mantle.
Yes, a character's son succeeding them is different from a stranger that has nothing in common with them succeeding them. This is true.
And he is, yet again, misusing the term legacy character. Riri Williams is a legacy character.
Yeah, I honestly gotta give this to Birdbrain because Gary has made clear now that he does not know what a legacy character is. If you're going to make a video like this, you need to understand your terminology when it comes to comics.
And never mind the fact that although it was never going to succeed, that was the intention, and there were articles written about Riri Williams being the next Iron Man, but it's not about passing the mantle.
What does this nitwit think he's saying here? She was Iron Man in the books that we talked about earlier. They explicitly say that in the comic itself. Those producers are talking about the MCU version of the character and how she's not replacing Tony, but carrying on the legacy, being a legacy character. You know, Gary, that term you don't understand being the poser you are.
And again, she's a bad legacy character because she neither respects Tony's legacy or upholds it. You can't brag about her having nothing to do with Tony and still say that she's a good legacy character.
And Coogler, you're an executive producer. Now, I understand the connection to Wakanda Forever, but you couldn't have Marvel add Creed, Sinners, or I don't know, the first Black Panther?
You say you understand the connection to Wakanda Forever, but you don't seem to actually understand the connection to Wakanda Forever. Ryan directed a movie that is already a part of this universe. It was incredibly well received, and it starred this character. Why would it make more sense for them to advertise movies that are not their own property, especially rated R movies? Are you forgetting this is Disney? They only recently allowed rated R movies on their streaming service. Like, I know thinking causes the last 3 brain cells you have to heat up, but come on, son. Maybe spend less time coming up with racist thumbnails and more time on your craft.
I have to give this one to Birdbrain again because no duh Ryan Coogler's going to name drop the movie that Riri appeared in previously.
Anyway, we finally learned something about the character.
I heard Riri Williams was a genius. Riri, I see you. I see you're fed up, waiting to be acknowledged for your greatness.
And right off the bat, we get the staples of modern intersectional feminist Hollywood writing. We are told she is great through constant affirmations from other characters, but never shown.
What an incredible load of shit. First of all, we were shown that she is a genius. That was in Wakanda Forever. You know, those words that popped up on the screen that you didn't seem to understand. This is why they didn't use sinners, dipshit. This isn't the introduction to the character. Exactly like in the comics, Riri was introduced in something else and then later got her own series. I don't think anyone who hasn't already seen Wakanda Forever will be watching this series without that context.
I'm here about the vibranium detector that you built for the CIA.
Nah, I ain't built no detector for no CIA. I made that for my metallurgy class.
A school project.
The professor said I'd never be able to do it.
To be young, gifted, and black, though, right?
The design for the machine is on that laptop.
Yeah.
And you just leave it on a desk in a car garage.
I got 2065 byte encryption on that thing.
Ever locked yourself out?
It took me the whole semester to get back in. I had to build a functional quantum computer just to crack my own encryption.
How old were you when you built your first machine?
3. My stepdad was a car mechanic. He wanted to build airplanes, but he gave me these tools and let me just work it out.
We were never shown she was a genius, huh?
Yeah, nothing really convinces me that this character is a genius, especially after watching her show. Being a genius is more than pulling inventions out of your ass.
And she's being kept down by the patriarchy or the system or both.
And what part of this trailer showed anything about the patriarchy or the system holding her down? Just like the shitical stinker, you randomly bring up political talking points that weren't even implied. The only reason you brought those two things up are because you are a racist and a misogynist.
Well, no, they were implied, and that's exactly the route they go with in the show as she turns to crime because she doesn't want to positively contribute to the system legally. Call him a racist and a misogynist all you want, it still doesn't change him being correct.
Which is even more pathetic because you're talking about a series aimed at young women. Dude, you are 55 years old. When the fuck are you going to grow up?
You say that, yet you're speaking for young girls despite being an old head yourself because no one in that demographic is actually watching this garbage. And he's talking about this for the same reason you're talking about this. Because it's part of the biggest franchise on Earth that a lot of people are invested in. So please spare us the "this is a movie about space wizards" defense.
And she deserves her acknowledgement despite the fact that she's already going to MIT.
You are not the first genius at MIT.
Man, I'm glad they told us she was a genius again, and she just recently got back from an internship abroad at the isolationist ethno-state of Wakanda.
Wakanda isn't isolationist. Their policy was changed in the first Black Panther movie. That was like literally the plot.
Again, this is another example of him picking and choosing what to remember about Black Panther. Here he's saying that it's unambiguous that Wakanda is no longer isolationist, but if you criticize the show for not having Riri go to Wakanda for help, he'll say that Man-Ape being in charge now makes all of that irrelevant because we don't know what his policies as King of Wakanda are.
Or how about Wakanda? They seem like they'd be more than happy to have someone of your talents on boards.
See? That brain cell is getting a real workout. In any case, we don't even know if she can contact the people of Wakanda. Man-Ape is the king now, and we don't know his policies regarding the usage of Wakandan tech. and I love the mention of them being an ethno-state. Gary and his handler Will Jordan have this weird hatred of Wakanda, mainly because it's a positive representation of black people, and they really, really hate those.
No, people find Wakanda in the MCU to be a stupid place to live because it's completely primitive and barbaric. It is only able to operate because a person uses the powers of a magic panther god to rule over everybody. All it takes is one dipshit to completely ruin everything and cause World War III on a whim, with no checks or balances around to stop him.
But Wakanda is a country in Africa that closed itself off from the world for centuries, meaning they never got colonized. Of course they would be an ethno-state. He only has a problem with this because they're black and prosperous. Japan is also an ethno-state. Do you ever hear these motherfuckers complain about that?
No. They probably choose not to criticize it because Japan is an actual place where actual people live and not some dumb writer's shallow fantasy. And no, it's not an ethno-state, as Japan doesn't have any laws explicitly giving one ethnic group privileges over others or refusing citizenship based on race or ethnicity. Racial and ethnic minorities exist in Japan and have legal rights protecting them. The most basic research of the country will tell you this. Just because they don't let you into the country so you can act like a drooling idiot like Johnny Somali doesn't mean that they don't let any black people in.
How come you're not working at one of those fancy tech firms?
After my internship abroad, I want to build something undeniable. Something
important.
Iconic.
Maybe it's opposite day. If by iconic you mean making something unrecognizable and forgettable, sure.
Like CinemaSins, this idiot is talking to the characters like they can hear him.
But that's not what he's doing. He's pretending as though he is for comedic effect for the viewers watching the video. Why does this need to be explained to you?
But isn't it interesting that he's calling her suit unrecognizable and forgettable while also claiming she's stealing from Iron Man? Unless, of course, he's talking about the show itself, which also doesn't make any sense because the show isn't even out yet. I explained in an earlier video that what these people like to do is attempt to plant seeds before a media property comes out and hope to harvest the fruits of outrage when it does. That's why they make video after video shitting on a property before it even releases and then try to claim they were right.
Well, as someone who has seen the show, while she doesn't steal from Iron Man, she does steal a lot.
Gary here likes to copy basically everything Will Jordan says, which is why they both lied to you about Thunderbolts, because they both assumed their audience would fall for the grift that time.
Okay, that's interesting. How did they lie about Thunderbolts?
Oh, come on. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy, huh? Who's a good boy?
Me.
Oh, who's a good boy?
I am. I'm a good boy.
Well, I guess he didn't have time to tell me how they lied. Oh well.
But at least they found something new because this black female genius in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is totally different from the other black female genius in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Shuri.
Right? It's almost like Marvel has a genius problem. You know, like the white male genius Hank Pym, or the other white male genius Tony Stark, or the other white male genius Doctor Strange, or the other white male genius Bruce Banner, or the other white male genius Mr. Fantastic, or the other white male genius Peter Parker, or the other white male genius Howard Stark, or the other
Again, you can only describe these characters based on their race because the moment you actually describe their characterization, Riri shallowness as a character comes to light.
Anywho, the rest of the trailer is a bunch of gobbledygook featuring that awful costume and the villain, the Hood, who is from the comics, who's had some connections to Dormammu.
Wait a minute. Who the hell is Dormammu? You mean Dormammu? If this entire video hasn't yet convinced you that this guy is a poser, this has to seal the deal. I mean, it's not like the MCU hasn't already featured the character and specifically had a sequence where that character's name was said over and over aloud or anything.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain. 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 Dormammu, Dormammu, Dormammu.
Yeah, Gary looks pretty dumb here.
But the rumor is in this, he'll be connected to Mephisto, which is too stupid to be true to waste a great villain like Mephisto in a show like this, but considering this comes from the same company who decided to lead with the female Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four, it makes it believable.
Okay, two things. One, there is no way in hell the MCU is debuting Mephisto in this show, and I don't know why you think they're even teasing that. So just like the cynical grifter, your grasp on marketing material is complete and utter Dog shit.
And immediately you managed to make yourself look dumber than Gary because holy shit were you wrong here.
Well, I go by a lot of names. Some of them are actually a bit cruel and hurtful to me. But I like you, Riri, so you can call me Mephisto.
The reason that bad things happen to you is because you're a dumbass.
And 2, you odious bird-brained idiots continue to misunderstand that First Steps is set in a different universe and that they will be coming over to the main MCU timeline in their film, which is why there is a female Silver Surfer. I mean, they literally spoil that in the after-credit scene of Thunderbolts. You dingbats want them to have the male Silver Surfer in a universe that they are leaving and will likely be destroyed in Secret Wars. I might have been a little generous assuming you have 3 brain cells.
This is all complete nonsense that you can't back up. So please take your meds, you psychopath.
Oh, and just in case you didn't notice, it has hip-hop music in it because this is a show about black people. And you know that decision came from a boardroom full of woke white people with non-binary kids who don't live anywhere near black people.
What part of this show is being executive produced by Ryan Coogler are you not getting, you human pack of baloney? You know, the guy that had people crip walking in a period piece set in 1930s Mississippi? And newsflash, black people kinda like hip hop. Well, real black people and not the trash pandas that you know. What I'm saying is, this is a show made by black people, starring a black character invented by black people, and executive produced by a black person. I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume all the black people involved with this project were okay with the hip-hop in the trailer, my nigga.
Yeah, so now you guys know where I got that clip of him from. I don't think anything more needs to be said besides the fact that Riri Williams wasn't invented by someone who was black. So your weird racial narrative continues to fall apart, Birdbrain.
So what did we learn about the iconic genius and insanely popular comic book character Riri Williams Ironheart? Unfortunately for Marvel Studios, this may be the most comic book accurate depiction of a character since Iron Man, because it turns out she's an ungrateful, insecure narcissist who craves acknowledgement and an unlikable brat who aspires to be undeniable and iconic.
So because a young black woman aspires to create something iconic, she's a brat, ungrateful, narcissistic, insecure, and unlikable.
Yep. Sounds about right. You can desire to make something iconic and still be a bad person in your attempts at doing so. Do I need to explain to you how someone like Hitler wanting to make Germany iconic in his own mind doesn't negate how he went about doing so was horrible? I'm really getting tired of the performative stupidity.
Guys, I don't know how many ways I can explain to you that this man is a hateful bigot, but he's literally telling you that himself. I have no idea why YouTube continues to allow people like this to exist on the platform when they spread dangerous rhetoric like this from innocuous trailers for a comic book character.
What dangerous rhetoric are you talking about? I understand simply disagreeing with Neurotic's takes, but what kind of mental gymnastics are you pulling to convince yourself that he's being racist here? All you're doing is lying about the content on a channel you dislike so they can get demonetized. It's beyond scummy and can't be justified.
I can completely understand if you have no interest in this show, but Gary has somehow made this a conversation about race and a host of negative attributes because the main character is a black woman. This is nonsense.
I don't believe you at all when you say that you don't care about people disliking the show, when you just lied about someone espousing hateful rhetoric because they didn't like the show.
And while I won't say he shouldn't be able to give his trash-ass opinions, he damn sure shouldn't be making money from them on a platform that pretends to be progressive. This is a Rumble video if I've ever seen one.
That's right, Twin! Only people with the correct viewpoints that you approve of should be paid on YouTube. There's no way that could possibly backfire.
And what has Marvel learned? Clearly, absolutely nothing. Like we said at the time, right after that big win with Deadpool and Wolverine, Marvel went right back to their regular scheduled programming. They followed that up with Agatha, Captain America Brave New World, Daredevil Born Again, and Thunderbolts.
This tired idea that the MCU is dead only makes sense when you start making arbitrary distinctions, like the weird people that try to say Guardians 3 and Deadpool and Wolverine don't count for reasons. Agatha, Brave New World, Born Again, and Thunderbolts were all well received by the audience. Like, each one of those. MCU hatred is a popular talking point on the internet, but it isn't reflected by the actual movie-going public.
Writing quality doesn't matter. Box office numbers doesn't matter. Overall viewership doesn't matter. What does matter? Rotten Tomatoes scores. If that's the only thing you can rely on for a franchise that continues to decline in every possible standard, then the MCU really is cooked.
And miss me with whining about Rotten Tomatoes, parrots. Gary himself uses this as a metric, so I don't want to hear it.
If Gary seriously thinks that Rotten Tomatoes scores are the only valuable metric for success, which I doubt as you have lied repeatedly throughout your video, then he would still be as much of an idiot as you for using that as a point.
Anyway, there's nothing else here. As per usual, this 26 IQ dunce is only here to spread ignorance to those with lower IQs than even his. Posers like Nerdrotic and Eric July particularly annoy me because people give these numbskulls the benefit of the doubt because of the performance art they display. People assume that just because this man has toys in his background, that he knows anything about these characters, when it's clear to me that his knowledge is very surface level and that he's using this feigned authority to grift. This man is not a comic book fan. He doesn't even know what a legacy character is. Real comic book fans celebrate new characters because it gives us more stories to read, which is what we're in this hobby for, and we only ever dislike writers, not the characters themselves. Nerdrotic hates the character, and that's why he's not like us.
And so ends another dog shit video from Birdbrain. This guy seriously ends his video saying that he's a true fan because he mindlessly praises anything that comes out simply because it's new. You can't make this shit up.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
But he does bring up one point I will agree with, which is that the reason a character sucks has to do with the writers. So I could potentially end up liking Ironheart if writers just, completely changed everything about her. But I doubt that's going to happen. So what's going to happen instead is that we're more likely going to have this character gradually disappear, much like a lot of other now obscure superheroes, once people realize that this character has nothing going for them. But hey, those are just my thoughts. And if you have any of your own, be sure to flex them off in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you!